Good evening and welcome to the Monday, January 8th meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission. We'll start with a roll call. Chair Lisa Hanson, present. Vice Chair Jacob Miller.
Present.
Alder Jim Hutchinson.
Present.
Alder Darius Daniel. Or Alder, I'm sorry, Commissioner Darius Daniel, my bad.
Present.
Commissioner Ken Ravinsky
Present.
and Commissioner Michael Braddock.
Present.
Moving on to approval of the agenda for the January 8th, 2024 meeting of the Plan Commission.
Motion to approve. Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Braddock, second by Vice Chair Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to the approval of the minutes from the December 11th, 2023 meeting of the Plan Commission.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Commissioner Braddock. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then moving on to regular business, and we start with item number 1, which is a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Times. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items, and we invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or only providing information in this matter, and your comments or concerns. We also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. We will now open the public hearing on item number 1. Public hearing on a request to allow a conditional use permit to establish a 2-family use in the low-density residential zoning district located at 515 Forest Street, submitted by McClone Investments Property.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The property in question here is a fairly small property on the east side. This is 515 Forest, previously addressed 517 Forest. Here is Main Street, cuts over to Forest, and the universities at the off the screen here to the north. Concerning the future land use, this parcel and most of the area surrounding it is designated for low density residential development. And the zoning, it matches fairly closely with the zoning being R1 low density residential, again with the surrounding neighborhood outside of this little corner of the block. This property has had multiple uses in its long history, obviously built for some sort of a commercial setup on the lower floor. Primarily residential on top. There's been a mix between having it be a single family use, 2-family use, commercial uses throughout its history. And the newest owner has converted this into a 2-family property. So obviously 2-level duplex. So within our code, we use the land use development standards to review those, and in that it calls for a conditional use permit. Also within the R1 district, it calls for a conditional use permit. So we have the CUP for the 2-family use within the R1 district. And then also within the land development standards to have a 2-family established within 300 feet of another 2-family. So with that, we looked at a 300-foot radius per our code, which is this purple line here. The red dots represent all single-family homes. The yellow orangish ones here represent a 2-family, and then this is an industrial, commercially kind of parking lot. So within here, we're showing this is still predominantly a single-family neighborhood with only a couple duplexes or 2-family uses within that neighborhood. So with that assessment and with the approval of the CUP, the use would be allowed there. So that is all for the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. All right, now with this item, is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 2. Consideration with possible action on a request to allow a conditional use permit to establish a 2-family use in the low density residential zoning district located at 515 Forest Street, submitted by McClone Investments Property Owner.
Thank you. We are recommending approval of the request subject to compliance with the rest of the Green Bay Municipal Code.
Motion to approve. Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Rosinski, second by Commissioner Pratt. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that will move forward to city council for the 16th.
16, yes.
Okay. Moving on to item number 3, which is a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Times. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or only providing information, and your comments or concerns. We also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. We will now open the public hearing on item number 3. Public hearing on the request to rezone the property located at 1728 Deckner Avenue and 120 South Henry Street from low-density residential and very density residential district to the public institutional district submitted by Community and Economic Development.
Thank you, Chick. So this is regarding Our Savior's Evangelical Lutheran Church. It's highlighted in red on the screen. We go to the next, here's kind of like an aerial shot that you can see of what's on the property. You've got a church, a school, parking lot, parsonage, and then some green space. Just to the, actually on the south side of the parcel, but looking north, I guess, in the photo. The future land use calls for that property to be low density and other public and semi-public. So that when the comp plan was done, it just really included the actual building. It didn't include any of that parsonage, it didn't include any of the green space, it didn't include the parking lot. But then, once the comp plan got approved, the church bought the land to the west. And bought that house to do a driveway and some other improvements there, which that having been in the comp plan as R1 makes sense because it was a single family home at that time. And then as far as the density, or excuse me, the density, the zoning, the church property is zoned R3, which is very residential, generally our multifamily district. And then the former home site is zoned low density. And the request is to make it all be public institutional. This is kind of similar to other items that you've seen over the past few months of churches coming into that public institutional. It fits better with their uses and what they want to do. Currently in the R3, a church is permitted by right, but in the R1, it's a conditional use permit. This just allows them to do a little bit more, and this includes actually upgrading their sign to include an electronic reader board. And that's what they're proposing to do at this time.
Thank you. So now with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who'd like to speak on this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 4. Consideration with possible action on the request to rezone the property located at 1728 Deckner Avenue and 120 South Henry Streets from low density residential and very density residential district to the public institutional district submitted by Community and Economic Development.
Thank you. So Alder Stevens and neighbors within 400 feet were notified because of the size of the parcel. We didn't hear any comments back when the staff report was written, but since then I did hear back from the property owner at 1814 Deckner, and she just had questions. She just wanted to know more about the project, but had no concerns or issues. So with that, staff recommends approval of the request.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Braddock, or Commissioner Mervinski, second by Commissioner Braddock. Any further discussion? All right, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and that will go forward to City Council for January 16th. Moving on to item number 5, which is a public hearing. And this public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Times. Planning Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items, and we invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or only providing information, and your comments or concerns. We ask that you provide your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open the public hearing on item number 5. Public hearing on the request for a planned unit development at 101 Bridge Street, 119 Bridge Street, and 239 Arndt Street for the development of a mixed-use project submitted by Bolton and Menk Inc. on behalf of the Green Bay Redevelopment Authority property owner.
Thank you. All of these addresses, 101 Bridge, 119 Bridge, and 239 Arndt are all part of the shipyard. Yay. So shipyard proper is down here. This is the development site, which is 3 parcels, obviously just chunked up, need to be combined at some point, which will go through this process. But this will be the future site of 2 phases of a redevelopment project. So a little bit more background, we have our future land use, which calls for public institutional parkway along the riverfront, which we have established. And then the hot pink here is the high intensity retail, office, or housing. So that's looking for any sort of high intensity downtown use is what was selected for anything on this side of the river. As far as the zoning is concerned, we did a mass rezoning of the entire shipyard neighborhood a couple of years ago to reflect our shipyard investment strategy. And that brought this into the D2 downtown district. So D2 has pretty much the most flexibility out of all of our districts when it comes to uses and densities. But a PUD is still required in this instance because there are some use and setback things that need to be reflected for the development that was proposed for us. So the development itself does come in 2 phases. The PUD for now will focus on phase 1, which is this. There are 2 separate buildings connected via skywalk, and it will be for 109 apartment buildings. So this will be entirely residential in nature. Our downtown district does not allow for residential units on the first floor of anything that is road facing. So part of the PUD was written to reflect that the residential dwelling units could be on the first level of these buildings. So as you can see, this was architecturally done very well to reflect trying to get as much view of the river as possible. So the buildings are set at an angle with angled porches as well. So that way each unit has a good view of the Fox River. Here you can see a little bit more about that phasing. So all the parcels are shown here. This will be divided into 2 parcels. I believe that's under review currently. So that will be done shortly. So the update to the land division will be reflected when we do come back for the phase 2 amendment to the PUD. But for phase 1, we're looking at the 2 buildings here and then the surface parking associated with that here. So this parking will not be done until phase 2 is done. So this is not included as part of the PUD language. To give you some more visuals, this is all included in your packet, but it does show you a little bit of how they have scattered some of the balconies to make sure that people have a good view opportunity from all of the units. Again, some of the schematics, some of the design information is also included in your PUD as part of that preliminary PUD plan. But overall, it's something that we've been working towards at the city, especially the RDA side, trying to make sure that if we're going to do multifamily, to make sure that the densities are correct for this neighborhood, for the size of this land, and for all of the parking that is or will be available here. So within the PUD itself, the different things that we had to vary from the D2 district were to allow for the first floor of residential dwellings, a reduction in the parking requirements. We've discussed a few times with you all our downtown parking. You know, we're feeling a lot more progressive these days. I think that you guys have been supportive of that as well, to allow the market to kind of reflect how much parking is needed versus our code. A setback adjustment along the north property line, which is here. This would be considered the front yard, which is kind of weird because there isn't really a yard to go off of, not really a street to go off of. Broadway's up here. Bridge does come all the way down technically, but it isn't open to the public the whole way. Right now, you wouldn't think that it's really a road. So we would need the setback off of here to be adjusted, which is reflected in that language. It would go between about 50 and 90 feet, give or take. We did write it not to the specifics of this in case they did need to move the building a little bit, but the language is reflected there. And then reduce the minimum lot area requirement. So our minimum lot area requirements for multifamily are based on the number of units. This would not meet that, so we wrote in specifically what they were looking for, which I believe is 79,000 for that lot area. Based on the number of units, which is 109. So not a lot of adjustments needed, given the flexibility within D2. But the rest of the requirements we feel are definitely okay. Especially looking at the setback area again, because there isn't really a front here. The front is really the river, so. We believe that the building design is situated well on the lot, considering the lack of road frontage and then having to take into consideration the river front as well. So that's what we have for that so far.
All right, and then with this public hearing, is there anyone wishing to speak on this item?
I'd like to speak.
If you can come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. My name is David Dahl. I'm an attorney for Proactive Solutions USA LLC. It's a corporation downtown. It's principally a chemical company. Has been there for a protracted period of time. We employ about 45 people. Do make a substantial economic impact to the area. We've made significant investment into the buildings over the recent years, as have others, which is why we wonder why anyone would think it's a good idea to put residential development in the midst of this. I mean, it certainly might look good on paper, but in reality, this is a very bad idea, and we do oppose it strenuously. There's a couple of reasons. I could go on, but I mean, just principally, the number of trains and traffic within the proximity to this residential development is extremely undesirable. If you look at Bridge Street and you were to spend maybe 20 minutes down there on a busy weekday afternoon, you'd see the kind of vehicular traffic, especially industrial type freight traffic that's going through there. Not just trains, but also, you know, very large trucks on a constant pace. And not just my client, but some of the other businesses down there like Fincantieri Marine, also Ultra Plating, have made very large investments in those buildings. They're not going anywhere. So you're not going to have this transform into some sort of residential neighborhood just by putting a couple buildings in there that are completely out of place and unsuitable for this development. So you've got the traffic issue. It's a safety issue. I don't know about you, but I really would not like one of my children playing on a scooter in front of a situation where you've got train traffic, you've got 18-wheelers, you've got the normal flow of cars and trucks that would go there. It's not appropriate. This is a bad development. When I look at your overhead, I see that there's two access roads to this development, both of which will be completely blocked when trains are going through. Trains stop for up to 15-20 minutes at a time. Add to that the transit time, you're talking blocking this off from emergency vehicles for up to a half hour. These buildings will be cut off for up to a half hour. That's for an ambulance, a fire truck. Very bad situation. If you have spent time down on the Bridge Pearl Street area after a rain, you'll notice a very large problem with accumulation of water that the city has not rectified in decades. When you transform what is currently permeable surface into impermeable surface, when you transition from grass to pavement, you're simply going to make the problem worse. There is no coordinated effort to improve the drainage situation along with this. So my client's point of view is that you should pause, reconsider this development entirely, do not approve it.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Name is Mike Metzler. I am the property manager for RBJ Holdings, which owns much of the surrounding property of this proposed development. We agree with much of what Mr. Dahl said. We think this is a bad idea. based on safety for the tenants of the potential apartments. Train traffic, like David said, is out of this, it's 1 hour. So in long ones, you can be stopped for 20 minutes. Our tenants are concerned about traffic backup on Orange Street and Bridge Street, which would impede any access of our tenants at 301 Bridge Street, 306 Pearl, 315 South Broadway, 327 South Broadway, and 314 South Pearl. All of these would be negatively affected by this development, and we highly recommend this does not happen.
Okay. And could you give your address for the record? please?
622 Eastview Drive.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone else?
This is Steve Miller with the Slingshot Architecture who designed the project. I just wanted to let you know we have a couple people from the architecture firm, a couple people from the civil engineering and landscape architecture firm, as well as the owners on the call if the commission has any questions.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 6. Consideration with possible action on the request for a planned unit development at 101 Bridge Street, 119 Bridge Street, and 239 Arndt Street for the development of a mixed-use project submitted by Bolton and Meg Inc. on behalf of the Green Bay Redevelopment Authority property.
Thank you. I can try to address some of the concerns that were brought up during the public hearing, though I think that the ownership team, being the RDA, might have a little bit more, and then also the applicants may have more information. Concerning emergency services, this is something that we looked at pretty extensively for the whole of the shipyard development. It's no surprise to anybody in downtown that it could be extremely inconvenient to get to and from places, even if you weren't a police car. So that we have discussed at length at a staff level while considering the development of this site. But also all of these projects get vetted through fire, EMT, they all have to do their own personal reviews of it. So if there were any hangups on their end, they would let us know that. It's not like these plans don't go before those bodies for a review. It's something that they have alternatives for. I think our fire department made a boat, so that way they have better access to through the river. So we're not as concerned about emergency services when it comes to the bridges and the trains as we used to be. When it comes to the residential versus the industrial, when we looked at this entire area, I think that the city as a whole has a vision to revitalize or call more attention back to our river. So in that, we obviously took the spots that seem the most likely for development to kind of start poking around and see who's interested. While looking at the entire shipyard area, we looked at all the industrial users that are along that area from the shipyard all the way north to Walnut Street. There was maybe some potential for redevelopment, and then we looked at the businesses and they were like, no, we love it here. We have a good setup here. And that's why we kept their zoning district to be the same, knowing full well that we wanted to do something that was more mixed use in nature a little bit further south. I think you can tell the planning practice isn't usually to put residential against industrial. It's not a great practice. However, the industrial users here, they're not as intrusive as some other ones that we have in the city. And there's quite a buffer area here. This whole area has been designed with activity and bringing people to it in mind. That's not to say that there won't be challenges when it comes to access because of the train tracks, but we try to plan for forever. And while train tracks are also forever, there is always a possibility of getting more openings at different locations, getting more signals at different locations. So we try to be open-minded when it comes to that. Concerning the access points, we do have here along Bridge Street, and then Arndt Street would probably be more of a main access point once the whole development comes into play. This one's a little bit more accessible from Broadway, which is gonna be the main point of entry. So we as planning staff don't have any qualms about putting residential in this area next to the industrial users, because we also know there'll be a mixed use building here that would have some commercial entities to make it more of a space, a place to come to, a place that they wouldn't just be stranded on an island if they were to get stuck for some reason. And then the shipyard proper, obviously further south here, that would be another entertainment spot for them. So I feel like if you want more specifics on that, you could open the floor and have the applicant speak a little bit more to their decisions on that, but we as staff are in support of having residential units here.
And if I can add something as well, so the comp plan, which is dated more than should be. Also recommend revitalization of the riverfront downtown plan, also recommend that some of our EPA plans. Look at land uses. I mean, this is sort of that scenario that Stephanie had mentioned, historically had a very industrial river. And we still do have an industrial river in areas. But this would be expansion of the downtown into more of a mixed use of residential area. That can coexist with industrial, and you can see that on the north side of the rail yard type area. There was a lot of thought that those townhouses and apartments would never get rented right next to piles of lime and whatnot, and they're booked up. So I just wanted to throw that in, that it's not just staff's opinion, it's something that's been in their plans for a long time, in multiple.
There's several applicants on the line, I'd like to hear from them, so motion to open the floor.
Second.
We got a motion by Commissioner Raddick, second by Alder Hutchinson to open the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. You know, we got people on the.
They said
Steve Miller was the
Oh,
architect.
he said if we have any, well, we got questions. All right. We want him.
we'll give them the chance to respond to them.
Steve, if someone from your team wants to respond to any of the comments made during the public hearing, now would be the time to do that.
Thanks. I think you summarized it really well. I mean, from the architect's perspective, we, have met with the city multiple times and have done a lot of due diligence on, understanding the context in the area, and we've designed the buildings to, both align with the city's goals of revitalizing the riverfront and creating this mixed use residential use along the river there, but also kind of being one of the first developments like this in this zone, that the design of the building is kind of taking cues from some of the industrial neighbors and the riverfront and the historic shipyard. So I think, from our perspective, we're trying to design it so that it both pays respect to the existing buildings and the context and the history of the site, and industrial neighbors, but also, looking forward to, revitalizing this riverfront, providing residential density to, make the riverfront active, and the park across the water there. So yeah, I don't know. The owners are also on the call, or the developer merge, but I mean, our entire team has worked hard to try to create a development that aligns with the city's planning goals. So yeah, that's a short response.
Oh, and sorry, we were having technical difficulties, Steve. Thank you so much. Something. Do we have any questions?
Question, yes. There was some conversation, obviously, with the city back and forth. Has there been outreach to the community and the neighbors around the area to respond to some of those concerns, especially the safety concerns over the last several weeks?
This is the first we've heard any concerns from the public.
Have there been any forums or any opportunities?
And maybe I can answer that, and Matt may want to jump
Yeah.
in as well. So this has been not just this site itself, and actually a very similar project to this, but also the shipyard proper, the park area. We've been discussing this for about 5 years now. There's been at least a half a dozen neighborhood meetings out there. We've met with the shipyard district, it's a business association, the neighborhood association. We did got events at the Ignite Market, events at the Farmers Market. I can't remember all the other stuff. We put flyers on the garbage cans. These were at the early stages, but again, this isn't a brand new plan or anything. I mean, we've been working on these sites for quite a long time.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that, you know, the shipyard project generally would be probably the largest public engagement effort our department has ever undertaken. A lot of it was done prior to merge, being included in with the project, but a lot of it was after the fact. The project has gone through, merge project specifically has gone through the redevelopment authority probably at least 3 or 4 times over the past few years, with their full plans, being made available to the public. There's been neighborhood meetings with the business improvement districts and the neighborhood associations a handful of times as well. So I think it's fair to say that the public has been made aware.
And the project is kind of odd because it's not in the shipyards neighborhood, it's in Seymour Park neighborhood, so you've had outreach. to this.
I've been to the Seymour Park Neighborhood Association probably 2 or 3 times in the past 3 years.
Thanks, and, good.
Thank you. Motion to close the floor.
I got a question regarding the area between the proposed development and the river. That is a green space. And who's gonna control the development of that?
That is under city control, correct? Or will be?
So the city will retain control of all the land 50 feet from the shore. The redevelopment authority will continue to own that land. It's the land that's being improved as a riverfront promenade. On the south side of the slip, that will continue to be RDA owned as well. The north side of the sites, outside that 50-foot setback from the river, would be owned by Merch.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know if that's anything to do, it's, well, seen over time, that there's pretty extensive plans, for that river walk. So when you say green space, I would say it's a combo of green space and hardscape.
Right.
Much like the river deck would be up here, except it would be a little bit different on the south side, more modern, new. Not related to the PUD, but there's fishing piers, there's, once you get to the south side of the inlet, there is a sand beach. There'll be commercial opportunities there. Dog park, concert venue, outdoor concert venue with a natural lawn.
Right, so the whole area in general is gonna be trafficked by pedestrians. I mean, that's the thought of the whole plan. Okay, thank you.
Question possibly for staff from the applicant. Regarding the parking, you were saying that you are meeting the standards for parking with the project, correct? That there's no recommendations for cutting spaces or other?
No, there are. So within the PUD language, which I just put away.
The section F on access, circulation, and parking.
Yes. So for the residential parking, so downtown, we have reduced anything for non-commercial has reduced already by written by our code that this is all residential. So that would be 1 per unit that's required. They are asking for there to be evidence of the parking within 1,000 feet, which is usually what we have for our shared parking agreements. So they will have the 45 spots on site, and then everything that they can't compensate for, they would have to be able to show that there's evidence of off-street or private parking that they could utilize. So that's the reduction that they're looking for this phase.
And has there been any plans if they were required to have a spot for each unit on site?
Utilize underneath the Mason Street Bridge or?
They would be able to do that because if there is public parking there. So they just would have to be able to show that it is there and available for use. If that gets pulled from this, they would have to find the spaces on site or work it in with the phase 2 parking. And then figure out parking then. Which would be ideal considering there's a commercial component in the phase 2. Mhm. So the idea of this, I mean, we had the same discussion with the last PUD that was like this nature, was that we aren't gonna know the clientele that they're going after. We don't know, I mean, maybe it is just people who don't wanna have a car who want to ride a bike, maybe, we don't know what that's gonna be like. So the idea is that we know statistically that there is enough parking downtown if people were to share parking. So the idea is that if they can't meet what they need for 106 units, that they would have to then say, okay, we can't do it. We need to adjust our PUD. We need to expand our parking area. It would be for them to figure out if the market doesn't comply with what they're looking for versus us pushing the vote on parking. It's them having to react to the parking. So we're okay with the flexibility of them looking for that reduction because then they can show us evidence of what they need and whatever they can't get, they'll have to provide it themselves. And with the entire shipyard project, I mean, there are different phases for us on the city side of that project, and some of that does include more public parking there, more service parking there. So that is written into their development agreement, and that if that were to come to fruition, that we would have our own parking in that area of town, that they would get, you know, kind of like first dibs at some of those parking slots as well. So there is some foresight on their end for parking considerations, but the first phase, if they can show evidence that there is parking available for their tenants, that's all that we would need as the PUD is drafted now.
Any more?
Chair. Alder Johnson, Chair, when you have, if
Go
I
ahead.
could.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, as many of you know, I represent this area. Just wanted to speak in support of this, and I want to make sure that I mean, obviously appreciate the investment that's been made by other users in that area, but wanting to make sure that the Plan Commission understands that we have a development agreement in place, and that was the time when a lot of those conversations took place. And what you have before you today is really the PUD. And so it's really kind of understanding, knowing the development is already authorized, it's already approved, there's an agreement between the city and Merge. It's understanding what are the conditions in the zoning code that you want to apply to this particular site. And if you're okay with the modifications that deviate from the traditional zoning code. I think the big one, really on this one is the parking. And as someone who's advocated for eliminating minimum parking requirements altogether, I am certainly more than okay with this. If you want to know the impact that minimum parking requirements have on development, take a look at downtowns that have a lot of vacant lots. That's what happens when you impose minimum parking requirements. And so that's not what you want to see in downtown. Parking lots don't add value. I think it's important that we recognize that developers are smart enough to create solutions to things that are going to impact their investment. And we have plenty of time to react and modify things before we head into that phase 2 development. So I support what we have here. I also recognize, again, the feedback that's been shared by others, while acknowledging that this is an area in transition, and it is an area that's going to develop, and that's been already taken care of really through the development agreements that have been passed. So I think it's important that we make sure that we get the zoning code just right. That's going to allow this development now to be successful, because otherwise what you do is you put the developer into a position where they have to do their development. That's, again, already authorized, right? They're going to have to do their development with the zoning code that exists right now today. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to get a less attractive product than if you make the modifications that are being proposed to this PUD. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions for the applicant? Do we have a motion by someone to close the floor?
Motion to close the floor.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Craddock, second by Vice Chair, or Alder Hutchinson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm gonna make a motion to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Commissioner Daniels. Any further discussion? No,
So
go ahead.
I think it's a risk with the parking situation. There's a lot of conversation about this might happen in phase two, and this might happen later on. And if we're trying to attract people to that area and develop that entire area, there is no real indication of what the parking needs will be. I mean, people can guess, people can estimate. But we look at some of the other places that have done development in surrounding communities, and parking is a nightmare in areas they've worked to develop. And that detracts people from wanting to go downtown or to those other locations, to the attractions, to restaurants, stores, etc. Visiting people, I mean, it's not only people who live there, but it's also they have guests and friends who come and they have vehicles to get there. So, I'm just not comfortable with taking that much concession on parking with the idea that we still don't know what it will look like for phase two and finding surrounding parking, which is surrounded by a residential area.
I understand the concern. If there wasn't a lot of parking just to the south, I'd have similar concern, but there's a lot of parking underneath the bridge. And I don't know what you're gonna do there other than park. Because it's underneath the bridge. So because of that, and because of the fact that the developer is gonna have to come up with ways to meet this. Well, they'll have to come up with a way in phase two, which will have another kick at the cat to look at this. So I think for me, this isn't such a concern at this point.
All right, make just one clarification. The parking is just to serve their specific use. This is not for the shipyard's public improvements. In phase two, there is a timeline established for when they do need to construct the second building and build any additional parking. And so we do have a clear understanding of what the demand is for the parking with that specific development. And we do have some additional considerations to create additional public parking to support the shipyard, the public components, public amenities elsewhere within the Broadway district. Just needed to make that clarification.
But will phase two have residential parking
Yes,
for this project?
so the site plan includes an additional parking lot. So that can accommodate both the commercial component of the merged development as well as additional housing for the merged development. And I believe their second building will include some interior parking in that building structure as well.
That's coming down the road.
That'll be for the second,
We're not
when the
looking
second
at-
building is constructed.
Okay.
Yes. Mhm.
And when is the estimate on?
I believe, I'd have to double check the development agreement. I think it was around 2027, but I'd have to double check on that. Within the next few years.
I'm comfortable with the amount. There's enough, as Alder Johnson said earlier, let's not regulate the developer into annoyance at minimum with this. They know how to provide the amenities, especially parking for the residents that they have there. It's not getting in the way of it.
Any further discussion? We do have a motion by Commissioner Ravinsky and a second by Commissioner Daniels. All right, hearing them, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, so we've got 5 yeas, 1 nay, going forward to city council for the 16th. The next item is a public hearing. And this public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Times. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name is called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor or oppose or only providing information, and your comments or concerns. We also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Planning Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open the public hearing on item number 7. Public hearing on the request to create a planned unit development at 2405 West Mason Street, 0 West Mason Street, and 0 9th Street to allow the development of 8 attached single-family homes, 7 single-family home lots, and extension of Hinkle Street from West Mason Street to Hobart Drive, submitted by Garrett Bader related to property owned by GB HMC West Mason LLC, Shates Family LLC, and Green Bay Parks Department.
Thank you, Madam. And this is a little bit odd, so the last 3 items on your agenda, 7, 8, and 9, are all related to the same project. So 7 is the public hearing on 9.
Mhm.
8 doesn't have a public hearing on it, obviously, generally open the floor during action items. But I put them in this order intentionally because they are all interrelated. So 8, 9 are interrelated, so I wanted to get that all out right away. So when people are talking about the number 8, which is the variance requests for the streets and whatnot, they kind of have an idea of what's going on, right? Okay, that's it. This is the project area. So this is the far west side of the Green Bay. You have the Highway 41, Interstate 41 on the east side. Just to the north is Walmart in West Mason Street. To the south is Beaver Dam Park. 9th Street that continues into West Point and then goes off to Packerland. And then to the west, you have primarily single family neighborhood. There are 2 family uses in there. There is the manufactured home park. And then also along the frontage of West Mason, basically on the frontage roads of West Mason, there are mainly commercial with a few industrial type users as well. And I'm actually gonna get up. Point. So for the planned development, it's really only taking in these sites right here. I show all of this in because it does cut a little bit into this parcel, which takes this entire parcel in. And then this dash is just the notice area, the 400 feet notice area. The next one, step, please. Thank you. This is the future land use plan. Kind of I mentioned in the staff report that a little bit more detail. The red is a general commercial use, and the pink is a high intensity retail office or housing use. So that's what our comp plan recommends for this area now. Move on to the next one. The zoning, the primary center area there is all zoned R1, low density residential land uses. And then obviously to the north, you can see it's commercial. And this is, I just kind of mentioned, I guess I didn't need to get up. This is really the area that's encapsulated in the PUD. You'll see as we go through this a little bit more, it's going to talk about areas outside, that's mainly for the variance request. So overall, this is the overall plan. So I'm going to kind of jump into it from a PUD perspective. Up again, should get a laser pointer. So it encapsulates multiple facets. So one is an extension of Hinkle Street that would lead from the Mason Street frontage and the Hinkle Mason intersection to Hobart Drive. That is not part of the planned development, but you need to use that to get to the planned development area, and would include a very small, but 160-foot long cul-de-sac called Southwest By Court, supposed to be called that. This really has 5 different elements to it. This is just the conceptual subdivision plat with the roadway with detail on the road. This is the same one with the aerial behind it, and maybe this makes it a little bit easier to kind of see those different elements. So the first element is way up on the top. That's a commercial redevelopment site. The second stage would be a townhome development. That would be 8 townhomes on the west side of Hinkle Extended. As you continue down to the south, I mentioned the cul-de-sac, Southwest Valley, that would be a 7-home, single-family subdivision. Across the street, it is thought that the road may continue and you get another maybe 3 or 4 acres over here to be able to develop as a future development area. And then this, which you'll see better on the next slide, would be the park expansion to Beaver Dam Park. And then as you look at these, they're a little more zoomed in from what you saw before. So what you see for that single family subdivision is smaller lot sizes and more dense development of the single family homes themselves. You can kind of see that in this one as well. The townhomes are very typical townhomes that you would see all over, but the lot widths are actually pretty wide, recommended to be pretty wide. And the fronts of these townhouses are being proposed to be one unit to be side loaded, the other unit to be front loaded. So there would be a garage space that you'd see off of Hinkle, but then it would be the side of a garage that has some aesthetic features that doesn't quite make it look like a garage. And that is located here. And then this commercial development, which is right now really a light industrial use. It had been a machine shop forever. That has been light warehousing right now. With the PUD and some of the things you could put in the PUD, it would allow that to be redeveloped into more of a commercial use, which is what the long-term plans and really the zoning calls out for. If you zoom on to the next one. This kind of shows that park switch. So when you notice that Hinkle comes down, it has to actually enter part of Beaver Dam Park to get back out to Hobart. And that's reflected in that gray area, which is about 1.2 acres. You'd only use about a half of that for the roadway itself, but there'd be an outlet to the north of it that would be separated. So it's included in the right of way. And then what would be dedicated to the public would be approximately 20 acres that would be added to Beaver Dam Park, which you can kind of see there. I guess to kind of give you some background on the area itself. Back many years ago, about 60, 70 years ago, Bellwood Lane was put in. Primarily, this was all annexed into the city. Bellwood Lane was to come in, connect up to Springdale, that would come up from the south. And then there would be a set of roads in here. If you remember a couple months back, maybe 6 months back, there was a request to change the official map and to vacate some streets. It's all kind of reflected in here. There was a street here at one time. There was all kinds of map streets inside of here. The property owners over the years, which I believe this was all a family farm area, had sold off their frontage along all the frontage ways. So at this point, the only access point into here would have been Springdale coming in from the south and then Bellwood coming in from the west. Back many years ago, they liked to do a wonderful engineering thing where they would encapsulate streams and rivers in pipes. It was accepted, it was common practice. So when Bellwood went in, they actually encapsulated a navigable waterway, which you can see here in that light blue that continues, connects up to Beaver Dam Creek, goes underneath the highway and then continues to the east. So when that was developed and the road was stopped, these owners decided not to develop at that time. They just let it release out of the end of the pipe and it continued to be a navigable waterway. Well, in that time frame, DNR rules had changed, environmental laws have changed. You are no longer allowed to encapsulate a waterway. So any extension to Bellwood Lane is not permitted. So Bellwood is stuck where it is. So you no longer have any access point this way. These are all private lots, no access way between. From the south, Springdale was thought to come up through the park and come up in. You obviously have that same creek situation running here. You can sometimes do a bridge over them, but it depends where it's going to. So what also happened during this last 67 years is the centerpiece was found to be heavily loaded with wetlands, navigable waterways, and floodplains, making most of it undevelopable for residential or commercial purposes. passive and active recreation purposes for park setting are permitted in those areas. So you'll kind of see that future development area is kind of cut out. And I can tell you it's cut out because it follows the wetland boundaries, the floodplain boundaries. So that's sort of some background on it. The petitioner came to the city quite a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I've been looking at this area with the property owners, the Boucher family, the Schatz family. And always the biggest issue is how you get access into this property. The city has always been looking for a way to get in there, but just not feasible. The petitioner owns the old Hasselblad machine shop, which has a considerable side yard. Almost enough to get a regular platted road through, which would then get you access to the southern 27 acres approximately that's out in here. So again, the PUD only really covers those elements, the commercial, the townhouses, the single family, the future development, and the park expansion. And it does have things, it does have reduced lot sizes, but not for very many, just a couple. Lot widths. It has some variances for side yard setbacks. There are controls in there as well. So to give you an example, a side yard setback for a regular single family home would be 6 feet. These were at 5 feet, but they also have a control that there's an easement on the neighboring property so you can maintain your home. Those setbacks are arbitrary numbers. They're set at that size so you can maintain the size of the house. So those controls are all kind of put into place. The commercial redevelopment site would have very little green space on it after redevelopment. So in that area, we are recommending a 0 setback, both along extended Hinkle and then also to the south, which would require a buffer yard. But in those areas, as you can see in your draft plan development, we would require a decorative fencing wall, sort of like you see on Main Street. Over on the east side, see some of that over by the cathedral over here as well. And then on the south where the commercial would adjoin the townhomes, there would be a requirement for a buffer there as well, generally a 6-foot fence. Kind of the beauty with that is any of the townhomes coming in or any of the buyers buying those townhomes are going to know what they're getting when they go there. As this is an infill, the real kind of kick with all of this is it's developing its own neighborhood. It's really not connected to, drastically connected to any other neighborhood. It's sort of a neighborhood unto itself, which, you know, kind of lends itself to that more smaller kind of innovative type, subdivision and neighborhood. With that.
Okay. All right, so we're on the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item?
The petitioner. Good evening, everyone. Garrett Bader, 300 North Van Buren Street. Does anybody want a paper copy of the plat? Take a look at. Dude.
Is this, wait,
Going twice, not 3 times.
No, I feel like very loud.
Sure. I figured, like Dave said, 7, 8, 9 together, I'll talk now. That way, if there are
okay,
questions anybody has, I'll gladly introduce. Is it possible we can bring up the PowerPoint?
No, during the action,
I'm sorry.
during the action item.
yeah, when we open the floor to the action item, this is the public hearing.
Okay, so do you want me just to wait then? Because it's, I'll present there and there's nothing really to talk about right now until then. We'll wait. Wonderful.
We'll open the floor and wait.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
All right, is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to item number 8, which is not strictly. Right, okay. Item number 8, consideration of possible action on the request to deviate from various sections of the municipal code, chapter 36, subdivisions for the design and development of 8 attached single-family homes, 7 single-family home lots, and extension of Hinkle Street from West Mason to Hobart Drive, submitted by Garrett Bader, related to property owned by GB HMC West Mason LLC, Shates Family LLC, and the Greenview Parks Department.
So, thank you, Jenna. Chairperson. So this is not what the public hearing was for, but they are so interrelated. This is for subdivision variances. So chapter 36 of our code, of our municipal code, is our subdivision code. It deals with things like, street widths, lot sizes. Zoning code also does sidewalks, pedestrian ways, that kind of thing. So again, this is the area, and I'm not gonna go all over it again, because you just heard that, which is why I did that up front. I'm gonna zoom down to the next one. All right, so this is, as I had mentioned before, kind of a different type of situation, where the access is really kind of difficult. And in order to do it, the petitioner is, requesting to put in a new platted street, which I kind of described before, and they need actually 10 different variances from the subdivision code. And I'm gonna go over those just super quickly. So the first one is the minimum lot size. For a single family home, or excuse me, lot width. Our municipal code requires 75 feet unless it's an infill in an infill neighborhood, then it matches the neighborhood. The petitioner is proposing lots 9 and 10, which is a little bit difficult to see on there. But lots 9 and 10 are the two on the north side of the cul-de-sac, yep, right there. Those are being proposed at 56 feet wide and 62 feet wide. The street frontage for lots on the cul-de-sac bulbs need to be at least 50 feet. Lots 11 through 14 on that cul-de-sac bulb proposed to be arranged anywhere from 43 to 47 feet. Lot area, which links into width, obviously, is supposed to be 7,500 square feet per single family lot. Again, for newly platted singles, infills kind of match the neighborhood. Petitioner has three lots, actually, lots 9, 10, and 12 that don't comply with this requirement. They range anywhere from 5,730 square feet to 7,136. Number 4 is double frontage lots are not permitted in the city of Green Bay, although you see them in quite a few places, usually not the best situations. Such as the north side of Lombardi Avenue, north side of East Mason, where the backyards abut a front street. There is one lot in this development that is double fronted. Now, a corner lot is different than a double fronted. A double fronted would have the front and the rear on 2 different streets. So a corner lot, like number 9, would not play into that, but 15 definitely would. And the code says where there are double fronted lots, they're required to have a 20-foot landscape buffer. And in this instance, there is not the room to do the buffer in that location. Number 5 is the required street widths for Hinkle, which is classified as a collector street. So a collector street moves traffic from one collector to another, or an arterial. So as you go up local, collector, arterial, they just increase in intensity of use, typically increase in speeds. And the users that they service usually get more intense as you up your classification and road. So Hinkle would be considered a collector street. It'd be connecting Mason to Hobart. Hobart is also a collector. That is required to be between 70 and 80 feet wide for right of way, so just the right of way. And then cul-de-sac required to be 50 feet wide. So Hinkle Street is proposed at 60 feet on this plat, so you would need a variance from that. And Southwest by Court is proposed at 48 rather than the 50. Now the next one. Street design standards, so that's how you design your lanes, sidewalks, everything within the right of way. Those are supposed to have a street clear, so that's curb to curb between 40 and 44 feet wide for Hinkle, which is the collector, and 30 feet wide for Southwest by Court. Hinkle is proposed at 36 feet, Southwest by Court's at 28. So again, substandard, not drastically, but substandard from what the code requires. All plats are required to provide specific sidewalk pedestrian accommodations. Those need to be on both sides of the street. The petitioner is proposing to have a sidewalk on one side of the street of Hinkle, and it would actually kind of jump the street. So it'd be fronting the park on the southern half. It would cross at the intersection of Southwest by and then continue up along the homes and the commercial district on the west side. And then no sidewalks whatsoever on Southwest by Court. Number 8 is the street jog at Hinkle Street in West Mason. So and it's a little bit hard to see there, but you can kind of see how it angles a little bit to the southwest. The way the code is written is the intersection should come in completely straight or be offset at least 125 feet to block any confusion and traffic issues that go with that. The petitioner is proposing this to be offset at about 60 feet and then kind of reincorporated into the intersection. Number 9 is the Hinkle Street and Hobart Drive intersection. Code requires it to connect at a 90-degree angle. Now, in this instance, Hinkle is coming in as a soft merge onto Hobart, and then Hobart would be coming in at a 90. So that 90 is kind of there, but it's changing out. But I wanted to point out that when you did your official map amendment, one of the conditions that you had on the official map amendment was that Hinkle come in at a 90-degree into Hobart. That went forward to the Common Council. The Common Council amended that to make a statement that they would also consider alternatives to be presented. Acceptable alternatives to be presented. And then the last one is the minimum required radius of the cul-de-sac is 55 feet. That is to get vehicles around it and whatnot. This, you can see the cul-de-sac is kind of offset to the south. It's not just a bulb at the end, it's kind of offset. So it's at 47 feet as you go to the south, about 39 feet as you go west. Then obviously to the north, it's only half. So those are the 10 variances that are being requested. And if you could jump up to the previous slide, thank you. I'm going to go over kind of staff's thoughts on these. And this is not just a planning staff situation, so it's all city hall staff. There are criteria. There are five or six, really only 5, but there's 6 criteria that's in your staff report that you need to look at when you look at subdivision variances. So I'm going to kind of take these as groups. Well, I'm going to start as groups. So requests 1 through 6, and really I want to talk about 1 through 4. Those are the variance requests related to sizes and widths of lots. Again, 1 through 4. Pretty much all staff has reviewed those. We've talked about that before, that our lot standards are very suburban in nature. We're very quick to do PUDs to get some smaller lots, get a little bit more density to be more like the rest of the city is. And so we really didn't have a problem with 1 through 4. All of them can fit on there with a little bit modified setbacks. We feel they meet 3 of the criteria of the ordinance. It's due to the physical features of the site. It's a tight site getting in. Can't really get that roadway any further east until you get into the center of the site itself. B, modification is the least deviation from the ordinance, which will mitigate the hardship. I would agree that this is probably the least as far as those lots go, unless you have much fewer lots. And then it wouldn't meet density requirements. Again, this is almost 30 acres of area. It's just only a small part is developable. And then we also feel that it is keeping with the public interest, and that modifications are granted because this is a complete community or neighborhood unit, provides public spaces, obviously, and improvements for circulation, recreation, air, light, service needs when fully developed and populated. So we feel that those 3 or 4 criteria are met with 1 through 4. Number 5 is the street widths. This has been a little bit more complicated internally, and I don't think I've ever written a staff report for you guys like this before. But there has been interdepartmental discussion, primarily with the Department of Public Works, but also fire, about the size of the right of way and the size. So this would be 5 and 6, size of the right of way and the size of the lanes configuration. While quite a few community development staff feel that this is sort of a neighborhood to itself, those should be okay. Other staff are concerned with the roadway design and the size of those rights of ways, especially as a collector road. Public Works is very concerned, and they are opposed. They don't feel that it'll function effectively or efficiently as a collector street. And so that all in place, Staff does not have a positive recommendation on those two variance requests. So we can't support them at this time, at least with the information we have.
I think that's 5 and 6.
That would be 5 and 6, correct? Yeah, and primarily because Hinkle will now become the primary collector street for this area. Hobart will probably not be used very much anymore. It'll truly become much of a local until you get south of where this connection hits. But that intersection basically runs all the way down from West Point or 9th Avenue and goes all the way up to Larson Road at the north side of Mason. So that collector is going to be pulling in more traffic than just, the neighboring area, but it will be bypassing Hobart. So there's a plus and minus there as well. But I just needed to point that out. Great request number 7. And that would be the sidewalks, lack of sidewalks in Southwest by Court and only one on Hinkle. The argument has been made that there's only 7 homes on Southwest by, it's only 150 feet, sidewalks aren't necessary. If you know anything from staff, we are hardcore pedestrian advocates and bicycle advocates, and we do feel that there should be a sidewalk on Southwest by Court. There was less cohesion on Hinkle. Many staff thought one side of the street would be fine, especially if it's along the parkway, giving access to the park. But concerns with crossing a collector street, potentially mid-block, although there is, Southwest by would make a 3-way intersection, was of slight concern. But one thing to point out is Hobart does not have sidewalks. The frontage road does not have sidewalks. So this would be the first set of sidewalks going in to connect to those others. And when those roads probably are redeveloped, they would also include sidewalks as well. But we do feel that met several of the criteria that the physical features don't allow sidewalks on both sides because it's just so narrow. And then also, again, that this is a neighborhood onto it, so people buying into it are going to know what they're buying into. They're going to see it. So there you go. Request 8 was the intersection jog between Hinkle and West Mason. That is a very odd configuration. I'm not a traffic engineer, but it's an odd configuration, and it's it is a strange jog at 60 feet. So as you're coming south through that intersection, you're going to have to kind of go right and then straighten back out again to get to it. They just don't line up. So with that odd configuration, we are just not sure how that is going to operate as far as planning staff goes. Public Works as well has been requested additional information. They have requested a change to a traffic impact analysis that had been done about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. That traffic impact analysis took in other factors beyond that intersection. We had things like some of the frontage roads being closed off, some ulterior access to the commercial lots along the frontage roads. Had an opening at Isbell off of Mason, which was approved by the traffic commission, I believe. And I think it had an opening at Hobart to go out onto Mason. So those things have not been approved. They're not in the process with the exception of Isbell. So Public Works feels like that traffic impact analysis is not adequate any longer. It needs to be resubmitted with only that intersection and the frontage road still there, reflecting what's being proposed here. That has not come in yet. So we do not have that. Number 9 was the redesign of the intersection at Hobart Drive. So again, shifting that traffic makes that become a collector. Is going to make that much, probably take at least as much traffic as on there now, possibly more. But that will impact the Beaver Dam Park area. It will impact park vegetation and some of the legacy trees. And it'll actually come pretty close to the bulb when it's designed. And I don't know if, and I don't have it on here, that we can't really see you can kind of see a tree in the ball diamond there in the lower right. So it gets pretty close, but it's not right on there. Again, that came through as part of the official map amendment. The Plan Commission had asked them to come in at a 90. The council asked them to look for the petitioner to look for some alternatives. There had, as have not been any alternative supply. So what's coming here is the original, request. An additional issue for us, if you can see where the new intersection is that I have listed as number 9 on the sheet. There are 3 parcels that have singles or 2 families on them. And those driveways come out onto Hobart Drive right at that location. We don't know if the petitioner has been working, we don't believe the petitioner has been working with those owners on how to relocate those driveways if this were to go through. Now, the northern one and the southern one probably aren't gonna be as much of an issue because they're further from the intersection. But the center one's coming out right into the intersection, which is not permitted by code. So we do have some concerns on that, on how those are gonna be redesigned with that intersection. And feel that the owners need to be consulted. Parks Department has looked at this and they didn't like losing the little over 1 acre, 1.2 acres of Beaver Dam Park along Hobart. However, they do recognize a lot more frontage along the new Hinkle for the park itself and an additional 19 acres of parkland. So in their mind, that is a pretty significant increase in Beaver Dam Park. Now, a lot of it will be passive with probably just trail systems and that kind of thing because of the wetlands and the floodplains. However, I think they're excited to see an expansion there. And request 10 was the last one. That is the cul-de-sac bulb. So that bulb again is smaller than what's required. Staff's major concerns with that are clarity on if fire trucks, EMS trucks, other needed fire apparatus can make it into that cul-de-sac, turn around and get out. I've been informed by the petitioner that he's been in contact with the fire department and that is being worked through. But not just fire department vehicles, but also public utility vehicles like snow plows, street sweepers, and garbage collection. Our public works department has very big concerns that they cannot service those homes in that cul-de-sac. Well, it's too small. And when they do plow it, that the snow would be plowed either into the yards or to the driveways because they can't swing it around enough to get it back out. So that is the big issue with number 10. So again, the petitioner has been going through and analyzing the feasibility of developing this for over 3 years, 4 years. He's had civil engineers, traffic engineers, and they have developed, I would have to say, at least 6 or 7 different scenarios that they shared with the city. Those have slowly been kind of changed and morphed, and this is the desirable one that the petitioner would like to go forward with at this time. There was like I said, quite a bit of meetings with staff. There's a lot of one-on-one meetings of the petitioner going around to the business owners on the frontages, to the neighbors. Obviously, talking to the Boucher family or the Schatz family that's out there. And in October, the end of October, beginning of November, it was actually October 30th of last year. There was a neighborhood meeting that was held over at the school. It was pretty well attended. I'd say there's probably 15, 20 people there. Where it wasn't exactly what's being proposed today, incredibly similar, and the roadway design had not really changed. The biggest concern staff heard out of there was the traffic and the loss of park space. There's also some very old legacy trees in that park. And I say legacy with importance in that most part we did not want to see those 100-year-old trees. Those were the big things that staff took out of that neighborhood meeting. So we believe that staff believes that some of the variances are justified per our criteria. And we don't have an issue with some of them. However, there has been no consensus on quite a few of them as well. Not only among community development staff, but also throwing in the Department of Public Works. So the petitioner has requested this be moved forward, but at this time, staff really can't throw support at the project. However, if they do go forward, we do have 4 conditions that we suggest are placed on the variances. The Department of Public Works approved the redesign of the intersection of Hinkle Street and West Mason Street based on the updated traffic study and the findings within it. The Department of Public Works and Fire Department confirmed that they can service the development, including lots on Southwest Five Court. And the conditions, and including any conditions placed on it by fire. Some of the thoughts were maybe an extra fire, hydrant, yes, or some type of access way to get out. Alternatives to the Hinkle and Hobart intersection design be investigated, final design be brought back for plan commission, final approval. Is another condition, and then the associated plan unit development, be approved, which would be the next action item. It's a lot, but hopefully the next one will be.
Okay. Okay. I feel like we kind of PowerPoint presentation now before we go to the next item.
You choose to open the floor.
That would be, oh,
Motion to open the floor.
I feel like, wait, hold on a second for that. I feel like there's just too many questions at this point. There's too much.
Let's hold off on opening the floor. And I apologize, my voice is going, I was doing my pilot language yesterday. We need to work through what we're okay with. And agreeing with staff and just check that off. And then what we need from the applicant in terms of questions, information there, because we are not gonna go one by one and jump over. So what are we okay with? Let's just get that checked off with, and then let's narrow it down to the questions. I withdraw my motion. Dave, it sounded like the first four were not a concern. Can we characterize it as that?
I would, yes.
Okay.
But I feel like, yeah, the street widths were an issue, emergency services.
Yeah, it's the Weston designs, which were 5 and 6. The pedestrian access, which was 7. The street jog at
Yeah.
Hinkle and Mason, which was 8. The intersection of Hinkle and Hobart, which was 9. And then the radius of the cul-de-sac, which was 10.
So there is a traffic study that's been requested, but has not been received yet.
There was a traffic study that had been conducted a few years ago, but it had other elements in it. So, Public Works is requesting that be specifically re-engineered for just that.
Okay, so we do not have that at this. Okay. Is there a way we can take a little closer look up at where it's by Hinkle and connecting to the frontage? Yeah, I don't know if there's a close-up. I just need to understand, you said it was a 60-foot jog. I'm not seeing anything that dramatic. I just want to know what we're looking at.
Yep. So from center line of Hinkle and Mason up here, the center line of Hinkle and Mason frontage here, it's about a 60-foot
Okay,
jog.
so because we can't see Mason, they're probably a little bit more obvious. if
It
we
might,
have that.
yeah, it probably would be, because what you can kind of see here, this is the existing intersection. So it's actually being cut and shifted over this way, so when you go north of Mason, it actually lines up at this. A little bit over.
It is probably not anything to worry about. It looks like there's some additional curbing put around the frontage to control traffic a bit too.
Yeah, sure, so that, yeah, that intersection design, which is obviously not something you're rearing as part of the, or just the offset. The design would kind of change that interaction, so you'd have full access going north out to Mason. Going south, you could either go east. Or I guess you could go right or south. But if you're coming north, you cannot go left onto the frontage road any longer. And then some of those, there's some stacking in there for people taking the left, so they don't back out into Mason. There's probably about 3 or 4 stalls worth. Staff did have a little bit of concern that if you have more cars than that, is it gonna block the intersection? It's wider pavement there, so you could kind of, I think the applicant had explained to us that you could get around a car that's waiting there. But that is not a lane. So, I mean, physically, you could maybe do it, but again, I'm no traffic engineer, but it doesn't seem like the safest movements.
I probably read between the lines. I'm guessing the reason for the jog is because the property, I don't know which one it is, sits right there.
Correct.
And to make it a straight straight up there, you'd have to get
Part of the,
however many feet, 20 feet into that parcel.
correct, part of the parking lot of the neighboring parcel.
Hmm.
To line it up straight.
Which is also why the jog is shown here, so it goes up, it's to accommodate this parcel. not
Yes.
to be part of this.
And then what's a closer look at what we're talking about there side.
So and with number 9, why is Hinkle not just coming out to Hobart? Because Hobart's already straight, right?
We're just straight north-south.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There must be something with the land right there.
You could ask petitioner, it's my understanding that it's more so to make a merge, to make Hinkle's that collector and take the pressure off of Hobart and also direct the traffic up to that Console intersection. Rather than up to the frontage road and then over.
Right, because Hinkle basically turns into Hobart, is that at that intersection, is that what's happening?
Correct. Yep. So the traffic movements are more of a flow up Hinkle. And then Hobart, even though it still would be a collector, because it's connecting collector.
But
to
Hobart
collector.
doesn't go out to Mason the way Hinkle
It
does, so
doesn't.
that's why they're,
Correct.
okay, I see. But then we're also making that an extra narrow street too. So you're making it a collector. And it can't be the width that we're looking for.
Yep, a little bit narrower than what's required. So it's required to be 40 to 44 feet wide. And it's being proposed as
What is that width based on? Is that like DOT standards? Where is that?
it's what's in our subdivision code. I'm assuming that was written, I did not write it, but I'm assuming it's written with DOT or federal highway standards in place.
Yeah, it's usually from the federal highway, that's where we get most of our widths from. They base it on like speed, number of entrances that are allowed on those type of roadways, that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
I mean, if you really want to kind of talk about these in groups, one would be the right of way widths and the lane designs would kind of be one group. We could talk about the two intersections of the second group, and then sort of the pedestrian rate. Laying on its own. 1 through 4, staff really didn't have much of an issue with. 10, which was the radius of the cul-de-sac, we don't really have an issue if it's service, if it can be serviced.
Right,
And we just didn't have a conclusive answer on that, or they made their opinion that correct.
Well, yeah, planning staff did not get a decisive answer from fire. Public Works does not feel it's serviceable, but there's potential options that they can do to make it serviceable. So I guess I do want to point out, so this has been a living document for quite a bit. This last plan came in January 2nd. So there hasn't been a lot of time to vet that back and forth. At one point, there was a paved, it was Grass Creek, I believe, but there was an access point that came through at this point. So a fire truck could get through and get back home. But that's been removed in this iteration.
yeah,
But again, it's my understanding the petitioner has talked to Todd Coolman, which is our fire marshal that does this. So he might have a little more insight, but I would suggest still leaving that condition in place. We might not receive that.
Madam Chair,
yes,
I think in order to have a good discussion on this, so we're not going back and forth, I do think we need to open the floor at this point, because there's obviously people in the community who want to speak to it, including the petitioner, so I'm motion to open the floor.
I'm in favor of opening the floor. We just need some order to this. It's gonna take a while. All respect to Garrett, we can't get caught in a sales pitch here. We need to be focused on what's in front of us there and be making judgments on that, not being taken for what sounds good. So we just need some order here. I'm gonna take notes as good as I can on the questions and the answers if we need to review them. But let's try to get it all done, close the floor, make our decision. Let's not be bouncing back and forth.
So can we just start at the top then?
I think let's try to as sequentially as we can, and if Garrett does want to put something on, that's fine, but when we work through these, I want to get this. We're good on 1, right? Check. 2, check. Let's just make sure we're staying.
Let's do it.
And the petitioner did put together a PowerPoint, which we have queued up. So we open the floor, you'd like to go through that.
Okay, enough. Yeah, start with number 1.
Is there a second?
Well, no, we gotta open the floor ourselves.
we have a motion by Commissioner Paradic. And a second.
Second.
Oh, you got,
Sure.
second by Vice Chair Miller.
Yeah.
All right, okay, perfect. Okay,
Wonderful.
all those, all right, all those in favor,
Aye.
any opposed? Okay, so the floor is now open.
Hey, Garrett Bader, 300 North Van Buren Street again. Thank you. I was itching, like, dear God, please open the floor so I can answer questions. Look, this is a complicated project, but I want us to be okay with taking on complicated projects. It means really good things down the road. This is something that has been vacant and wholly underused for decades. Let's fix it. And I will go through almost everything we just talked about, which hopefully will make everybody feel good in voting for it, once you can see pretty pictures addressed with all the items. So can you actually go to the presentation? Is that possible? Right here. Oh, yeah. There we go.
I don't know if you can do that when it's shared.
Okay, so we can back up.
I think you need to back out of that. I think we gotta show it
Okay.
as a regular PowerPoint.
Can we
Problem
ask
is
if- can we
the-
ask if people can see it. It's a really good show.
But- Well, let's ask. Can everybody that's online, can they all see the PowerPoint?
Have a lot of people online.
Yeah. Let's share this.
Oops, I'm still in that view.
Hit escape. Just stop there. Go into your PowerPoint. Turn off the presentation.
So we did not see the PowerPoint in the full screen. If that's what you're trying to get to.
Sure was.
Hey, and you wanna share that?
Okay.
So yeah, I know it probably looks better, but.
No, there's some animation, that's a problem. All right, gang, I'm gonna breeze through these pretty quickly, but I think it helps everything, and then we can go back through, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, this will make a lot more sense when you see everything together. So. Today's request company plan to extend Hinkles, we talked about unlock this property and expand Deep Dam Park. So we can go on slide 2 here. What we want to see, of course, is the street come through, hook into a new intersection on Hobart Drive. Residential in front of you today is part of the PUD, property I own up here in front of it right now to the north of the blue. And to the right, the orange block there, the future development. This is being planned with expansion in mind for phase 2. We can continue, please. What you see in front of you is some paper, but again, we'll talk about here the PUD. David gave the background on the housing element, and then we're going to talk more about the streets, why the street makes sense. Trust me, it works. Promise you that. So what's the inspiration here? For anyone that's been near the Broadview Y, this is 172 Libel, Langley Court. That idea, smaller scale, dense, single family residential homes. Very well received, very nicely valued. They add a lot of density and proper, I'd argue, density to a neighborhood. Really check the values, add for a nice neighborhood. Looking at it on street view, yep. What I want to make sure here is that much of what you're going to see that I'm proposing is taken from here. Streets close to the road, just enough space for a vehicle on your driveway. Trash can be serviced here. Don't think otherwise. But a narrow street, this is 28 feet, very similar to what we're proposing. And note the rolled curve here. We'll come back to that too. Next image is from Luxembourg. Up by Northport Country Club. This is a new version of what we just essentially looked at, but they are also doing something similar. Smaller houses, closer to the road, enough for one car parked in them, and some decorative lighting. Same idea. Compact, denser neighborhoods. This is what we're proposing. This is one of the townhouse renderings. So what I want to show here in particular is that this is a very nice home. It's probably going to be about a $400,000 home. It happens to be butt up against another one with a party wall. But for those who have the imagery in front of you, or we'll see again on the plat, these are staggered a little bit. So what you don't see is that boring duplex feel that give a lot of negative perceptions to duplexes or twindos or townhomes, or if you want to call it. One on the side, garage loading, one in front. So when you go to the next slide, what you don't seem to go down the road is garage, 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 garage. You see a nice mix, some front elements, screening. It's going to look very nice. Going ahead here to the backyards, patio areas. For both units, the next slide will show you an inside look. I mean, again, these are very nice homes. So I want everyone to know we're bringing And some of these initial neighborhood conversations that we talked about is these are great neighbors that are gonna add to your neighborhood. We should all be very happy to have these. One more shot here just for, you know, what's in giggles. Same idea, kitchen, great room, nice fireplace. And we move. So let's talk about some of those things David touched on. We talked about density, reduced lot sizes and frontages. We'll talk about the commercial setbacks when you get close to Mason, how that has kind of an urban suburban feel with some standard color concrete and zero setbacks there, kind of a downtown vibe. Double fronting lots here, David talked about, when you don't want to see a lot of backyards. If you go to the next slide. This is not what we are doing. This is the fear behind the code ordinance. This is why we need part of the PUD. No one wants to see this. This is a relic of the 60s. We're going to avoid this. So I want everyone to know that when we talk about double fronted lots, this is what we're talking about. Nicely landscaped, that grows over time. You see a little bit of the backyard, but it's not junky. It looks very nice. Another image that here, when I used to live down in Florida, this was near my house. You could take some mature landscaping like we have along Hinkle, add in features like fencing or brick columns, some other landscaping to really give it a nice feel. One more example next here. What we did on the east side as a city. This is off Huron Road, Baird Ponds Preserve. Here, these trees are going to grow over time. They'll provide some screening and nice vinyl fence there. Again, I don't think anyone would argue that that looks terrible. Similar types of ideas is what we are proposing. Next image will show you when you get up close to Mason Street, what Hinkle could look like to some degree, which is standard colored concrete between a sidewalk, but a very urban feel. Zero setback. You can go to the next slide there, Dion. You'll have parking areas there. Do you put a fence up along between the sidewalk and the parking? One more shot again from Main Street here. You get the idea. Brick, some fence, a really nice urban landscaping that treats those areas appropriately. Let's go on and talk about those right of ways and streets that they touched on. If anyone read the memos that I put within the packet, what I say in there is that wide right of ways, wide streets, they're relics of the post-World War II era. You are designed for a vehicular focused neighborhood. That's not what we need anymore. And that's really not what we want. To fit in the appropriate street, lane widths, everything that would meet standard, you simply don't need, in this case, 80 feet of right of way. It's a waste. It's not tax paying. We don't need that. You can get by everything you need on 60 feet is proposed, 34 feet on the right of way. We'll show that in a minute. On Southwest V, V's the Romance language root word for life. It's V. 48 feet. I still love you. 48 feet here, 28 on the street width. So let's go and look at a cross section. Pretend you're in the middle of the road. This is what this is showing you. So it's like taking a street, cutting it right down the middle. So here you are. Here's your two travel lanes, 12 feet. On almost any given road that you're on, Mason Street, Maine, you name it, 12 feet is the standard width. Stuff being said, FHA standards, it's the whole metric. You can go down to 11 usually, which I would be fine going down to 11 because it actually encourages less speed. But whether it's 11 or 12, we provide it. You have bike combinations on each side, and then you have your curb. So 34 feet face to face, 36 back of curb to back of curb. Why is that important? You have ample amount of street for safe travel. There should be absolutely no question that you can safely travel the street and accommodate every decent vehicle that will be on it. More on that in a second. You have your standard terrace area for your trees, 5-foot sidewalk, back of sidewalk area, and then you have the utility easement. Let's go to the next slide. We're gonna look at Southwest B. Again, 48 feet on the right of way, reduced right of way. You have your 28 feet, much like that alleyway image, rolled curb. Here's that little sidewalk that Dave was referring to. If it helps for an approval, I'm happy to say you can bring the 4 feet around the cul-de-sac. Because it provides, Dave was calling it a carriage walk, whatever we want to call it. Provides an extra bit of space that can kind of mock as a sidewalk, and it gets people up to Hinkle. It's an easy thing to do. I did hear though, like we pointed out in the alleyway, 18 feet, a car can sit off the edge of the driveway without blocking the sidewalk or the street, while your homes are close to it. So here's the front of your home, right up on the edge of the utility easement. Why is it important to touch on those utility easements for a minute? Because the way that the code is written right now between right of way and street widths, part of the discussion that was internal was there enough room for utilities and the infrastructure that would be needed, which is why code asks for the right of way does. The answer that there really is. If you did a code street on Hinkle, for instance, can you go back one slide, Dina? There we go. If we did code here and say we had 80 feet on that right of way instead of 60, what you'd be left with is 30 feet on either side of the curb in which the fit utilities or anything else. What I'm proposing in mine is 24. It's only 6 feet less, 24 feet to fit in utility lines. That is plenty of feet. And keep in mind here, because of how we have existing infrastructure nearby, not every stretch of this road will automatically have all utility lines with it. Several stretches were not. We have plenty of room here. If you can go ahead one, Dina, Southwest V again. Nope, back to the, thank you. Southwest V, if it was a standard cul-de-sac with right-of-way dimensions, you'd have 22 feet on either side of the street for utility room. Here we have 22 feet. So you have the same amount of room for infrastructure that would be needed. One slide ahead, let's talk about the cul-de-sac bulb. So specific cul-de-sac sizing you'll see in your top left right there. Southwest V, 78 feet is the diameter, the orange of the actual bulb itself. 86 is if you include in that carriage walk. So when you picture that you have your actual cul-de-sac street, your rolled curb, and then 4 feet all around it, what you really end up with is about 86, where a vehicle could use it if they need to. Code would require 110. Genray Road in Bellevue is an example that we've been using because it was approved by Green Bay Metro Fire for use there. It services every vehicle needed without a problem. But you don't have to take my word for it. Go to the next slide, please. Here's using a school bus and a fire truck. Most people don't know because engineering wonks will know this kind of stuff, but your passenger vehicle is allowed to use any given road. You're maxed out at about 65 feet. That's a full length semi that you can picture. School buses are 63 feet, fire trucks are about 64, a max length. What this is showing, it's a truck turning diagram. And I live with these too much in the world in which I operate. But it goes to show, can a truck use this street as it's designed? School bus on your left, fire truck on your right. What you can see is all of them, and granted, it's tight. You're not, when you have 110 feet, you have more elbow room, that's for sure. You have the room to make all the movements to get in and get out. What that means is that any vehicle, fire truck, school bus, garbage, emergency, anything cannot max out more than 65 feet, it fits. It absolutely fits here. Again, as David pointed out, Todd Coleman and I, Green Bay Player, had a good call last Friday. Fully support the radius, the length, in fact, because the cul-de-sac shrunk in length since this was first proposed, a second exit point not needed, no longer desired. This can work. You don't have to take my word for it, follow with Todd, of course, if anybody wants to, but that has been approved by them. If we move on, let's go up to Mason Street. This is where I especially wanted to talk because for those who know me enough, my background, civil engineering is my bachelor's degree. The focus was transportation. So I lived this stuff, traffic, lanes, spacing. This was my life. I respectfully disagree. This is called a jog. It's not. In our professional world, this is absolutely not a jog. It's a street that lines up at the intersection. Now, can every street line up totally 90? Absolutely not. Many don't. What do I want to say here is that even though your right of way may not line up, your street does. There is no jog. To the average public, you would never know when you cross the street that there's anything different here. So you can follow here, you see the faint lines. Your lanes go and they match right up where you go. Your lanes come south, they match up right where you are. We talked about channelization a little bit. You have these islands that will channel traffic into the proper alignments where they can go or force traffic in certain directions. The initial traffic study that we've done, I know there's some questions here about traffic studies. Well, I will not bore you with any details in this form. Initial traffic analysis was done. It's been studied for years. This was February of 22. This is 2 years old. The traffic study David is referencing was a request for an update specifically on this intersection with some modifications. We're doing that. It's probably ready in about a week. What I would like this committee to look at tonight is when you're looking at that specific agenda item to approve what we're looking at, subject to the final traffic analysis on this. I'm here to tell you, this is going to show that it works. Nothing would be done by a professional firm like this that is not formally geometrically vetted and approved to work. This will probably lead to other things down the road. Dave was alluding to parts of this study that call for changes to the west. That's still something I want to push, but that's not a focus of our effort tonight. It's simply, can this work? I want there to be absolutely no question. This can work. Traffic professionals have modeled it and designed it to show that it can work. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea, again, when we talk about traffic jogs or intersections that maybe aren't perfect, they're all over the place and you don't know them probably because we never looked for them, right? On your left, this is Porlier, this is Van Buren by St. Vincent Hospital. The rights of way do not line up. You take a slight little jog, slight little curve in the street and you cross, there you go. That's a lined up intersection. This is West Mason, this is Fisk. These two do not line up either, but it's designed as a connecting route. Same thing that we're doing at Hinkle. This is West Mason and Hillcrest Drive, double F on the far west side of town. My red line there is showing if it were perfectly perpendicular, say that fast 3 times. That's what 90 would be. Here it's not. This was actually redone in the late 90s. That is a far better improvement than what it was. The point is, again, what I'm trying to say here is that the traveling public is maybe smarter than we're giving them credit for here tonight. These are all lined up intersections, just like we're talking about at Hinkle and West Mason. Rights of way don't always line up. The street lanes do, with sometimes just a minor little tweak to it. Let's go down to the south end. Hinkle to Hobart. I want to talk about the importance of free flow connection. Why this is really important to look at it from a free flow versus a 90-degree. So here's the request for the right of way coming south. You see it in the imagery in front of you. And how this would connect into Hobart. If you go to the next slide, and David brought it up, when we were here, believe it or not, it was back in July, when we came in front of here to do the map amendment. This was a request that was put in actually by Alder Hutchison to request was to have Hinkle come into Hobart at a 90-degree. Neighbors, there were 3, I'd argue, primary reasons that drove that request. One was perceived safety issues, especially pedestrian. Speed, they were afraid that the idea of a curb would encourage speeding. And trees. And I understand there's some degree of trees that will need to be removed here to put a street through, whether it's an angle or whether it's here. It's about the equivalent of 0.6 acres, to be clear. But as we'll talk about more, again, the city is being given back 20 for a park swap. So I think it's a very fair trade to do that. However, why do I think this makes more sense? If we go on to the next page, what I want to give a very quick introduction here on is the concept of why Hobart Drive is a collector street. We talk about it all, collector streets. It collects traffic and it distributes from the neighborhood level to a more regional or arterial level. What's happening right now is Hobart Drive with a little kink on West Point down to Wood Lane to Cross Mason. That is an arterial today. It funnels that traffic in that area. So I joke with people all the time, I have no life. So I sat out there and I counted using a Chevron analysis as it's known in my world. What is traffic doing here? You get a sense for how traffic distributes from the current intersection at Mason and Hinkle down through Hobart Drive, down to Wood Lane. If you'll notice here, 2460, 2380 vehicles per day on Hobart Drive at different points. What does that tell us? The short answer is there is some neighborhood traffic here. It's very much pass-through traffic. These are people trying to get from point A to point B. They are using this road. On your next slide, you'll see here that if we put Hinkle through, new Hinkle I call it here, you're really shifting that traffic. Hobart Drive north of the new intersection drops 500 vehicles a day from 2460. Why? Because this traffic doesn't need to do this anymore, of course, to get down there. It'll be a nice smooth transfer. A big idea of this is to fix the traffic nightmare that exists out here. And for those that have not driven here all the time or been around it, maybe don't appreciate it, this intersection stinks. This can fix it with the channelization, the new lane configuration, the adjustment of where this traffic goes. David brought up a point, and it's not incorrect, that there was a fear apparently expressed internally that, well, now this is going to act like a collector between Larson Road and West Point Road. Folks, it already does. It is. The big thing we can do here now is better align it and shift it to where it is better designed and can better handle this intersection. So you'll see the red dashes here. Now this goes back to July Planning Commission. What I was begging, Jim will call you out a little bit, but I love you. I mean, I was begging Alder Hutchison to do at that meeting was to open the floor back up so I could explain why the free flow works and the safety element I wanted to put on it that addresses what I think were all the concerns residents had about a 90-degree intersection. These are speed tables. If we go to the next image. This is an image from the north side of Appleton. It's along North Providence Avenue, a collector street. What I want you to point out is right here, you'll see how narrow the street is, but this is a collector, so it's exactly what we would do for Hinkle. What they put in here is a raised speed table. It also acts as a pedestrian crossing. It makes it very safe for pedestrians because cars have to slow down to come up to where a pedestrian goes, and the pedestrian has a flat walk across the street. Much safer. What you do is you give people heads up. Yeah, there's bikes, pedestrians ahead. There's a raised crosswalk ahead, 20 miles per hour. If we can go to the next slide, please. Here's how it looks when you get right up on it. You'll notice that the street pinches to it to even slow it down more. This, of course, can be tweaked by design. We have a ramp up, flat over the pavement where pedestrians walk and ramp back down. Next slide, please. There we go. So this happens to be on their Apple Creek Trail. It is beautiful. And I told the neighbors last time too, don't take my word for it. Take 25 minutes and go drive it. It works so slick. Why do speed tables work that slick? Because it's not like a speed bump where you have to slow down to almost nothing and then you speed up after. They encourage you to stay at a solid speed. You can design them based on how high you build them and how wide you build these ramps, 20, 25, 30 miles per hour. Guys, I'm telling you, these things are amazing. They really, really work slick. So if we go to the next slide, what I really want Plan Commission to approve tonight is the idea of this connection at Hobart Drive that has the free flow connection to honor, if you will, the fact that it is a collector, that we should try to keep that traffic flowing, but to keep it flowing safely. Right now, you go out there, that traffic does not flow safely. It's a straightaway from the frontage road down to West Point Road. You can fly on it if you want to. This will actually slow it down. So the speed tables provide the speed control, pedestrian safety, the same reason cited for the 90-degree, but the important part of keeping traffic moving far more safely than it does through this neighborhood right now. Either way, approving a right-of-way aspect tonight does not mean that a street needs to go there. We can continue to have a discussion about what is the appropriate street connection if one feels that this is not it. Although I think there's enough evidence here to show that it is. But just dedicating the right of way to it can allow this process to continue. And that timing is very important right now. David was mentioning the number of years I've been on this, it's actually 7. So we need, guys, I need action. This has been a lot of costs and a lot of waiting out here to do this. So the overall good this project can do, we can open up that landlocked blue shaped piece of property, get some tax space out here, notably new housing. Folks, if we're serious about adding housing, we talk about it a lot of committees. You need to be open to doing it on a smaller scale, more dense, with smaller lots, and something creative like this. We can notably improve the traffic flow. It's a very, very inefficiently operating area right now. This can fix that. I want to be clear, there's no perfect out here. This study proved it. Perfect sailed 50 years ago when we developed it the way it was, but we can make it a lot better. Combine this with the traffic, and it was mentioned a little bit earlier, but you can kind of start to create a whole new concept of a whole neighborhood. You have a smaller area, you're in with your neighbors, you have the density that comes with that, you have bike trails, you have a narrow street that's still totally passable, but feels better to cross as a pedestrian. It ties you right next to commercial with appropriate buffers and setbacks. You're next to an expanded park with walking trails. This is really a net positive for the neighborhood and that park's 20-acre park swap. So there's a lot thrown out there, but hopefully some pretty imagery that helps put some context on the requests that are being made. So what I'd really like to do is I'm happy to answer any question that you have in hopes of gaining approvals tonight, even if some of those approvals are subject to other reviews that are needed internally, in-house, traffic study, etc.
I need those 10 conditions that we're talking about back up on that screen, please.
Yeah.
Dave, is it fair to say this is not the first time you've heard this information, right?
That is very fair.
So how are we feeling just in general about some of these ideas compared to what's in the report?
Well, the report does take all of those things into effect. And again, a lot of it was interdepartmental concern. We are not right-of-way specialists or roadway specialists in community development. And we have not gotten a positive recommendation from Public Works.
Well, I don't have a problem with the product at all, as far as the housing, all of that is great. I think we're all hung up on is the roads and all the other issues.
Right, again, and this request is only the variances.
Right, the 10 variances, right?
Correct.
Do I still have the floor and able to speak?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At this point,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Can I just ask you noted at least about the request about the roads, is there something specific that I can answer for you? Or Charles?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to, I mean. The information about the fire truck and the school buses, the only concern I have is that that's great in perfect conditions, but we got snow. So that, I mean, that is the only concern that I would have, as far as you said, that the cul-de-sac was shortened, so because of that, you didn't need that other exit, and then the school buses and fire trucks are both, but I worry about the snow situation. and Public Works had said that they were worried about plowing it into driveways, and these driveways are already kind of short, right? I mean,
If you actually look, or if somebody has like that third image that's on the information I passed on, we can bring it up back again on PDF. We want it for
I
the
got two
parkway.
images I got.
If you see, much like any cul-de-sac, Lisa, you'll have some, driveways, of course, that are closer to each other or not. It's
Mhm.
plowed in between driveways. Then it's the individual homeowner's responsibility to clean it up from there.
Right,
I think it's respectfully and overblown fear, but
okay.
much like we would do anywhere else, it's always pushed away.
And again, any of these operations, when you talk about that, you have to defer to those members of staff that,
Right, okay.
So I
Was, so
point that out as well.
just to clarify, that was from DPW on snow removal specifically, right? There was no other concerns?
Snow removal, garbage collection.
And remind everyone of that alleyway image, garbage trucks can fit on narrow streets.
So, and I don't know the specific details of how Alway picks up their garbages, what size trucks they use. I don't know if they're different than ours.
My mom lives on Green right over there, right over by that division, but I can't think of what.
So again, I cannot really comment on if what they do in Alloway or in Appleton is appropriate here or on the streets. That is what we rely on.
And it could be as simple as our trucks are larger than the ones utilized in Alloway, therefore they don't have the turning radius and the wider. And that-
Correct.
Okay.
But I'll remind everyone again that passenger length vehicles are only so long, so if a school bus or a fire truck can fit, any garbage truck can fit.
The figure you showed with turning radius.
Mhm.
Is that the tire track?
Mhm.
Well,
Yep.
okay, so if there's an extension in front, it's gonna be overhanging or over the curb. Right?
Can we bring up that image again? Stuff, so I just want to make sure Jim, I understand the.
Well, and is that tire tracks right on the curb? I mean, is it just inside the curb or is there any space?
Well, so it takes you right up on the curb, but keep in mind again, what we're proposing here is that rolled curb. So it's easily mountable and we'll have that carriage walk on the other side.
So you're using like the sidewalk almost? Or?
If it would be needed, these truck turning radii do not show that. What I'm simply saying is it's there for a little additional room if one would need it.
Okay. I'm not too concerned about the radiuses, but they are tight. To me, that's very, very, very tight. I mean, just having worked with truck radiuses and whatnot. But I mean, it looks physically doable.
It is, I can assure you it's physically feasible, both with this and the Mason Street intersection or anything else. I'm here to tell you, I would not push for something that was not physically proven or shown to work. Here, again, could you always want more wiggle room? I think in life, we all take more wiggle room anytime on anything. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do something, because they can physically.
Okay, what about going the other way, like coming from the north? Like you have,
Okay, that's why
yeah,
we modeled it one way just to show the vehicles work. I can ask engineering to do that and submit it back through staff. It
yeah.
should not change anything really, but.
Because if they're coming from the north, it looks like it'd be a lot tighter to turn right and go south.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's probably like a semi-type movement again, when you look at that 63, 65 of length, does somebody have to come out this way a little bit and turn in potentially?
Right,
Potentially.
right, okay. The point is, it's tight, I mean, but physically doable.
Correct.
Just to touch on that a little bit here. So I live on Hubbard Street and we have a cul-de-sac right at the end of our, and measuring it on Google Earth here, you're between like 62 and 64 feet across. And I witness it every week that garbage does get picked up. And DPW is out there with snowplow. So I'm okay with this cul-de-sac. I think I mean, it's been proven right in front of my house. that it
The
works.
one at the other Hubbard that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well.
Now,
yeah,
I do.
I live right over.
DPW does bring out a bobcat to remove the snow from the cul-de-sac after it gets plowed. So there are logistically probably some things that might be a little extra equipment, but they have the equipment to do it. So it doesn't seem like an issue to me.
We can have Steve come back. Well, I
That
guess
is-
that is something to bring up, is if there are issues with DPW, I would very much appreciate to see the departments that are opposed to something. I mean,
And fire and public, I mean, it seems like this proposal is very strange, like, yes, there's a lot of details, and I think that's valid to point out, this is a bigger project than some of it. However, you know, if we have all these, we're waiting on this report, it's about to come out in a week, we have this department and that department speaking, and this may work, this may not work. I don't know how we're supposed to make a good decision tonight without all the information before us, and then I don't know how the council is supposed to pass it on without that information as well. And they haven't spent as long as us. So my question to you, Garrett, is what is the timeline? I know you waited 7 years, that's very long. But what is the timeline? What is precedent right now that a month from now or 2 weeks from now, the more information that seems to be right on the cusp of it would not make a stronger proposal and would not have some of these questions and concerns from the city staff answered? So there seems to be a lot of concerns, and I wish we could all move forward on it a little bit more united on this, especially if it is going to become a bigger project later on in more phases.
First off, again, what I'm simply asking is that you all approve it tonight, subject to. It takes that part to say, hey, this can be fine if we get that piece of information, a subject to part. Confirmation on the traffic study, if you need some fire department approval on the cul-de-sac or public works. Fine, I've simply asked that you approve if this committee wants to do so, subject to that. And regarding, urgency, to be honest, the answer, Michael, is everything. Everything. It's not just that this has been 7 years. That's, as I tell people, Aldine to Pier took me 8. So, okay, we're not quite up to 8 yet. But we're here now again at the cusp of another season where we can start construction, where we can start home building. And look, we've been very fortunate in a way. Some people will probably not look at it, that the strength of the housing market over the past few years. And I'm here to tell you, time is undefeated and it kills all deals. I know you're saying a week or two is nothing. Michael, it's everything in my world. Because all I need is a week that leads into 2, that leads into 4, then this is a season. Now I can't clear trees out of there. Now I can't get a contractor in place to put utility lines in. This is so, I wanted to be here in December, as David knows, and even November. We've waited, but time kills deals.
A question on that, his point. If this is approved subject to, what does that do with the council? Is that put on hold until those questions are answered?
Well, the council can either approve it subject to staff approval of those items, or they can make it come back.
So this is gonna go to.
Or they can
council.
make it come back to planning commission.
So this will go to council next week with a subject to thing.
If you approve it, we're recommending, yeah, some subject to.
Okay. I just wanted to know, it doesn't stay here until we get the stuff and then go to council.
Unless you want to hold it.
I'm sure Garrett doesn't want that.
The subject to could be like conditions, like we do CUPs with conditions, so if, you approve it, city council approves it, if those things aren't met, this doesn't go through.
Correct.
So these are the ones that Dave had recommended if approval were to happen based on what we've reviewed at a staff level. But they would be basic conditions, so if the PUD doesn't go through, this doesn't go through, if any of these aren't met, then then the entire application isn't met.
Since the floor is still open, to be fair, I'd like to ask if the alder from the district has anything to say. This is a courtesy.
Oh,
Also, if there's anybody else, I don't know if there's anybody else here to speak on it.
it's Brian as well, so, oh no,
You know, it's-
sorry, I was thinking of Hubbard.
No, I'm here to gather information, so I don't really want to give my opinion at this point because I would like to, I'm just hearing all the information. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's automatic. I mean, it's not, is there anyone else that would like to speak on this? Just come to the podium, state your name and
Okay.
address for the record.
Yes, my name's Kathy Hinkes. I live at 525 Antelope Trail. And I have been traveling West Mason every single day and every night for 20+ years. The intersections and the way that it's designed is an absolute nightmare for people that have to access off of West Mason. The backups, during rush hour, the morning, it limits business development on that frontage road. And I think it would add, as all of you have been referring to them as a collector street. We need another collector street between Packerland and Wood Lane. People don't even view, I mean, you can go through there onto Wood Lane, but when you're talking about everything that's on that frontage road, it's blocked. The only way into that frontage road is through Hinkle, and depending on which way you're coming, on West Mason off Packerland. So, and then when you get in it, it's a mess. Garrett has worked with the city now, it sounds like for 5 to 7 years. To me, we need to figure this out. We need to fix this. Yes, he's asking for roads that are a little narrower and some of that. Other communities right next to us have made it work. And I guess that's what I would ask from the planning commission. This is 100,000 plus added to our tax base on economic development. It's jobs, it's investment on the west side and what else we can do. So I would encourage you to approve this with, you know, the conditions that you need, because we need police, we need fire. But it seems to me we should know those answers right now, if we've been working on this for 5 to 7 years. So as a resident of that area, that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would wish to speak on this?
Hi, my name is Tracy McNabb, 673 St. Mary Street. I live in De Pere, but I own the property on the corner of the Mason Street Frontage Road and Hobart. I want to follow up with the traffic that goes down that frontage road that results in the cluster that we have at the intersection of Hinkle and West Mason. I believe adding that thoroughfare on Hinkle and having another street right there would benefit the traffic greatly. I think it would be a much safer environment that we have on the frontage road. And I think traffic would flow much better. So for that, that reason mostly, and I think if you can support that and approve it with those variances and excuse me, and with the other information he's going to provide, I think that is what you should do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this?
Motion to close the, sorry.
Well, I got a question yet. On the crosswalks, Garrett, where are those going? That you talked about, is that on the curve where the two roads meet?
The true answer is, Jim, you can put in as many hypothetically as you want, now within reason, of course, but do you
Oh,
want
you're
to?
talking about anywhere on that string, but there's gotta be a location in mind.
Well, what I mean by that is, do you tie them into a trail system that goes through the park?
Oh, I
Do
see.
you put them at an intersection that's on the north and south end? Do you try to keep them so that you flow through it? You could have 3. Do you have 2? Do you put one on Hobart Drive south of the intersection to even
Okay.
keep that mantra there? You could.
And Jim, if I can make a comment.
Yeah,
So Garrett won't be designing the interior of the roadway anyway. That is still a city function and it'll be done by the Department of Public Works.
okay,
What the parameters you're giving is a narrower right of way and a narrower built environment within the street. But you're not working with a private engineer here to design a street. It still goes through our Department of Public Works.
so he was giving a potential cross-section within this right of way.
Correct.
Okay.
But
But
giving a potential cross-section and saying that the speed tables are gonna be designed as not only pedestrian walks, but also as traffic calming devices.
right,
But where those would be, would have to be, I'm assuming approved by Public Works and possibly if they need to be varied through traffic probably.
okay. It's a means to solve an issue. It's down the road. One question I have though is, we have a curve and it's there, and we're a connecting street to it. By nature, that is creating kind of an unsafe situation, just by nature. Because you've got a 90-degree on a curve. Sight is limited. Speed, people are gonna be coming up to it. I can appreciate the frontage road. I can see where that is gonna be helped immensely. But then are we taking that issue and putting it down there on the curve?
If,
Or not? I guess, what's your input on that?
if Stephanie's able to bring up that, PowerPoint again, please.
Your purpose,
Yes. So if we go to, keep going down here. So I'd liken it to, Jim, if anyone has taken northbound 43 exit at Webster, right by Bay Beach. When you come down there, you're on the convex, the interior side of that curve from Webster to East Shore. That feels terrible, because you almost have to look 120 degrees to make sure no car is coming. On the opposite side here, you're on the concave side of it.
Right.
You're actually narrower than 90 degrees. It's actually, when you come down here, you're teeing in the speed stop sign, if you're 90 degree. This is very easy to see cars coming this direction. I think that's part of the beauty of this, and why this works. So in addition to all the other benefits, in my opinion, of keeping traffic flowing, using the speed table to do it at proper speed where no one will be flying through, you're on the right side of the curve there to address that situation.
Right, and what you said there is good because you said proper speed. So,
I really believe, again, this is not just. We had this discussion at the neighborhood meeting back in October. I said, if you guys are telling me that speed and safety are your really big concerns. This does it. This keeps it flowing, and it keeps it flowing at a much lower speed than it would if this were straight in this one.
right. Okay, and then my one last question.
You can ask as many as you want.
Since I, brought up the point about the trees earlier, because that was a main concern. And it's not just trees. It's specific trees. And we don't see where those specific trees are.
Can we go to the, this actually set? So the tree in question that Public Works has talked about is this one right here.
Okay,
And I want to point out for the record, so it was brought up earlier about the distance between this tree and the ball field.
Yeah.
I measured it out, because again, I have no life. The ball field at Edison up against Alpine Drive, I think is 22 feet from the fence to the sidewalk, and at Oakdale Park, it was even less. This, I think, was 27, 28. It's actually larger than those two, is my point.
Yeah.
And I've heard of major calamity. There was a plan, Jim, that I had that, this curve could really bend a little bit more if we wanted to, if I had some cooperation here. Admittedly, this owner has not been wanting to do that. So could this curve have shifted a little bit more, even to give a little more room here? It could have. So, where this route goes, in whatever way, there's a route you have to clear out of those trees. But, we're trying very hard, and we mean that, to save the ones that are most important parks.
okay, so, is there a reluctance to show where those big trees are on there? I mean, we're gonna lose some.
That's why the aerial's here, Jim. No one's trying to hide anything. You lose 6/10 of an acre of trees.
Right.
That's just there, but you're gaining 20 acres of trees. But these are them right here. And you're only taking out where the road's going. You're not touching any of these, or that one.
Right,
You are reducing as much as possible with 36 feet wide needed for that road.
yeah, I got it. So, because we're swinging to the left quicker, we're taking out more trees. And it's.
I don't mean to cut you off, Jim, but I respectfully disagree with that, because your distance that you're going here. You have almost the identical amount of trees, whether you're curving or whether you're going here. The way you would lose a ton of them is if this did like this. It came way down there.
Yeah, and I guess my concern would maybe minimize. If you just showed where the big trees are, the 100-year-old ones, you know what I mean? Just a dot. And I'm a civil engineer. I know we're gonna lose one. I know we're gonna lose two. But are we losing 30? Are we losing 10? I mean, that would be helpful. I mean, just to me, because I know we're gonna lose some.
I haven't counted the specific number of trees I have.
Okay.
And if
Well,
I can interrupt just a little bit, Jim, if I can interrupt you, but
Yeah.
can you have a conversation with maybe staff and not with the
Okay,
private engineer? It's,
well, I'm asking I'm asking the
Well-
applicant if he's looked specifically at a concern that people have, specific.
right, and he should answer you,
And that's what I'm
but
trying to get.
not, well, can you do this and should you do
Oh,
that?
right. Okay.
I mean, you're kind of doing a negotiation with them right
No,
now.
no, I'm not.
So
I just want to know if it's been done. I'm not trying to negotiate anything.
Right, okay. And I would like to comment too, that Parks Department did look at the trees, the quality of trees out there, quality of trees in the frontage. The trees in the back are not as high quality as the trees in the front. But again, nobody has done an inventory out there.
Okay. Okay.
It's just kind of getting, in my opinion, it's kind of getting back and forth and out of control and.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but it's just a specific question.
Right, I get it.
Follow-up questions for staff on the road that has just been discussed here on the screen. Obviously, the city is going to have say of the road, as you pointed out. So who has actually looked at that intersection and gone through those points, just like the applicant has?
Public Works has been looking at the roadway designs
Okay.
as proposed.
Do they have anything for us that we should be aware of?
They had, well, like I said in the staff report, they feel that it's not enough information that the road would not function properly.
I'm sorry, can I add some comment to that?
Following up to the staff. You know, and it says right in there that we don't have enough information. So what specific information can be provided to staff that staff would have a better consensus and approval of this project?
Well, the intersection of Mason and Hinkle is one request they have, doing a little more research with the neighbors on the one to the south and providing some alternative, which was a request of the council. When the official map amendment came through, is what Public Works is directly requesting from the applicant. No, they have not given us every detail on why they don't feel the engineering is working properly in their minds. With the lane configurations, that kind of thing. They feel just there's not enough information.
Is there anything, I mean, in the final summary, it said we just don't have enough information in general. Is there any other information on any of the requests that the city staff would want?
No, I think some of the information, more of the engineering information was wanted by our Public Works Department. But I think some of the items are just fundamental questions if these are acceptable practices for the community, and that's where you're getting the variation in staff opinion.
So, for example, again, with. if we were
Example
postpone this
is
any-
speed table on a
Yeah.
collector street. Some people think that's fine. Appleton has done it. Some people in city staff don't feel that's appropriate for a street that should be going 35 miles an hour. I mean, that's a difference of opinion.
Sure.
And it's like that on multiple aspects.
So I feel like with this situation, we want to work. We want to be friendly with developers and we want to work, especially a project that's been working this long, but I feel like. We're trying to push something through tonight when we don't have all the information.
Well, and I'd like to get it, Public Works here. to
Right,
speak as well.
so I mean, I'm leaning toward things like tabling,
Why are they not here?
yeah.
Well, the floor is still open.
Right, oh, right, no, I can't make a motion
Yeah,
anyway.
So can I address the issue you brought up before, Michael?
Yes.
Was there a specific question you had on this intersection? that
Well,
I can answer?
I just want to see the documentation and concerns from the city and from the other departments. And again, yeah, it would be helpful if they're here.
I think.
But if there's material that's missing from this or from the application that's being addressed when we're talking about there's not enough information to make a consensus within the city staff, then we need to address what that information is. Otherwise, we don't have access to that information, or we have to we just have to jump at a decision one way or the next. But I want us to make a
It's not,
good recommendation to city council. And if there's missing information, then
I don't think regarding this one, there really is no missing information. We talked about Mason, the traffic study that's underway. We talked about the feedback from the cul-de-sac, fire department and the DPW feedback there. Regarding this one, when we had development team about 6 weeks ago, the answer was from DPW, we do not need to do a traffic study here. So we're not, there's nothing more from an engineering technical perspective that is being asked that we were being expected to do here. David's comments had in there that DPW was expecting alternatives. If that was some sort of misunderstanding, what I've asked for from the beginning, again, it was amended first at Plan Commission, but I sought some flexibility back at Plan Commission, was to allow traffic calming to propose this. I mean, when you look at, what other scenarios would you really do down here? You're not gonna do a roundabout, you're not gonna do four-way stop, you're not gonna do it, an overpass. There's, you really don't have that many options. It's either 90 is what originally proposed, or a curve that I'm saying with the caveat that speed tables are happening. So Traffic Commission is gonna be taking up the speed tables later this month, January 20, that Monday, whatever it is, 22nd, 29th, something like that. What I would ask the commission to do tonight is, if you believe that this indeed is a collector, that the free flow element is important, that these speed tables would address the speed and the pedestrian safety that the neighbors are requesting, to approve it tonight, subject to a condition that Traffic Commission approves speed tables, that goes through that committee and is then approved by council. It would allow, I'm sorry, again, I don't want to make this about timing, but timing is so critical right now. If we feel good and we want a lot of this, I need you to take some risk with me on the things that can be conditioned to with other departments internally that will do their review on. I don't want anyone to leave here tonight thinking that this is the Wild West and, there would not be another check on it. There would be, but I'm really asking for your help tonight so we can keep moving. But anything else I can answer to help you do that, please ask. Happy to answer.
Motion to close the floor.
Second.
That's a motion by Commissioner Product, second by Commissioner Ravinsky to close the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm just gonna say this.
Where are we at?
We got the first 4 of the 10.
Which is where we
We're
started,
good.
yeah. I'm just gonna say this, in all my limited time on the commission, and maybe this is out of character, I'm surprised with this many questions and unanswered that was brought to us.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna throw that out there, because
And I can answer that.
it just seems like we're put in a position where, we know what we wanna be great, do good for a developer, but not have all the questions and not have the answers. And we have to either go into it with the assumption that everyone is gonna do their check and balances, or we have to give a developer who's worked so hard in the area a lag on it. I'm just surprised it came with this many questions to us. I guess, I don't know if that's the right, I'm just surprised it came with this many
And if I
questions.
can answer that, so
Yeah.
this has been on the docket for a while. I don't remember the last meeting we were gonna bring it forward, there were too many changes, we didn't feel comfortable bringing it forward. But the petitioner has made the application. It has to go forward, we can't arbitrarily hold it as staff.
Yeah.
So the recommendations, when they come forward and they're being requested to come forward, are deny or hold. And basically what we had said is we can't support it based on the information we have. But we can't hold it, we can't arbitrarily hold it. It has to continue. As it's applied for. So, yes, we would have probably preferred to hold it. But that is partially why we put the conditions as they are. A lot of approvals by other departments.
What were your conditions again, the 4?
I think a couple things we just need to acknowledge is, do we feel in a good position to be making decisions on things that are most likely outside of our expertise in some of these cases, or are we gonna trust staff or DPW in certain cases on their assessment of what it is? Some are a little bit more murky than that, but that is a core here. Are we gonna go with the recommendation, excuse me, from DPW on certain things to not go forward, or do we feel more informed than them to make a decision on? In many of these cases, I do not feel more informed than them and do not feel comfortable making that decision. I'll certainly take different opinions on that, but there's at least, I'll try to go through it, 3 or 4 of these that are very fundamental. That do we trust their opinion, or do we want to make our own judgment?
Procedural. For the number 1, so Department of Public Works does not approve, would it come back here or is it dead?
Well, the public works would approve it. If they don't approve it,
Yes, it's dead. It's not coming back. It's just done. And the same basically procedures for
I
all.
mean, he could apply for different variances at that point.
Change it up.
Yeah, it would be the same thing with two. If they can't confirm they can service it. Instead, obviously 3 and 4 are a little bit.
So would these four catch all of the 10 things?
Or just the ones?
Or just the ones that staff had questions or uncertainty or disagreement.
They would address 3 of them.
Do we need
So the
to-
sidewalk is more of a fundamental issue.
Right. Are you guys okay with the whole carriage walk and roll curve? Is that something that you're okay with? That's okay, as far as, okay.
Well, we discussed sidewalks. I guess everyone's. I love sidewalks, but.
I think.
But, yeah.
Cause
You
children like
crossed-
to
you
play
crossed
on
the bridge
them.
already.
Okay. But I'm okay with the carriage.
Do we-
Carriage.
Really, the Hobart Drive, Hinkle Drive is based on a lot of the plan commission requiring that to come in tonight. So we heard that when you brought that through and the alternatives were provided, so
So
we're
we
bringing you the same thing we brought you in July. And so staff did not expect to hear anything different from now than what we heard in July.
Do we have to specifically say though that if one of these conditions is not met, it only should respond to the area it's relevant to, you know what I mean? So,
I think
for
we could-
example, if number 4 was,
I think you could, we might have to break them out as individual, you'd have to spell that out in the conditions.
Yes, like you could certainly go through with this and say items 1 through 4 are approved.
We're good.
All your
Okay.
those are good.
Okay.
5 and 6 are dependent upon whatever, 7 and 8, depend, like you
Okay.
could break it down like that, because that would be clearer for us as a staff. And then also moving forward, to know who is directly responsible, because then it would still approve 1 through 4
rest.
regardless of if the other things fail. You know, it would give this the different items, different approvals.
I'm more comfortable with that, because then it's not us just suddenly all because of a sidewalk. The entire thing
Yeah.
has to stop.
I would
So-
say though that the, because we do to try to link any of these with any sort of other requests, so like maybe the whole of it be conditioned upon the PUD being,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
Yeah.
versus these, the
Yeah.
first 3 are specific to specific variance requests. So we've handled it like that in the past. We haven't had nearly as many variance requests for one, but you know, when there are 4, but you know, one's for sure a good recommendation, the other one, you're not so sure it has a condition, you can definitely separate them out.
Okay.
I know maybe I sound like devil's advocate right here, that say some absolute, just like, I want to try to find a way to make this work though, because that street is a massive improvement of what current condition situation.
Okay, why don't we just lay it out as they were saying with
Yes.
the conditions that they have and line it up that way? Because we don't have all the information right now, and until they have all the information, you can't really make a decision, but we want to make some kind of decision to move it forward. But also have the fail-safe in place that we're protecting ourselves at the same time.
So, question for staff then, on the 4 recommendations that you're giving.
Linking them right now.
Yes, great. Knowing that number 4 is not contingent on, or not relevant.
Right.
Specific items. But could you recommend to us
Sure.
what number 1, 2, and 3 would be
Yep.
related to?
I would say 1, 2, and 3 are all gonna be related to 5 and 6, which is the right of way width and the design of the street.
Okay.
Number 1 would also include request number 2. I want to go back and forth. Number 8 is the intersection jog. Number 2 would relate to number 10, which is the cul-de-sac width or radius, diameter. And then number 3 would relate to number 9, 5 and 6 and number 9.
So,
And then the last one, which is associated planned unit development, would apply to all of them. And then I don't know if there was I can't remember who brought up the potential for a condition of the traffic calming devices were permitted. That might have been there.
It was.
So if that would be something you would add, that would relate to number 9.
At 9. Or I'm sorry,
Number one.
Number,
It's the traffic system number one, 5,
Yeah, it would be.
probably.
Well, that's with.
so number one would be related to 5 and 6 and 8. 2 would be to 5 and 6 and 10. 3 would be to 5 and 6 and 9. And 4 would be to all variances.
Because then that allows us to let it go forward and you guys can continue to work on it. It's not a done deal. We're not approving anything specific, but we're letting the work continue. So we're also protecting,
But it could go to council and they could send it right back.
Well, that's
Yep.
not done.
Or also the change it.
or they might get the the new information
there's
by
new
then.
information.
Exactly. They might
I-
have,
I would say that at this point, there's been no one here has made any major objections to the things that are being proposed. It's just that we don't have enough information. So I would hope that within a week, maybe some of that additional information can be presented to council.
and if it's not, it will come back,
Come back to
on the
us.
22nd.
So I move to approve with the 4 recommendations from staff as they relate to number 1, variances 5, 6, and 8, number 2, 5, 6, and 10, 3, 5, 6, and 9, and 4 to all variances.
And then what would you like to do for item 7? Will it only have the,
That's the sidewalks on both
that's the
sides.
sidewalk? So that would right now, as we're in, that would only have the condition of the PUD getting approved.
Well.
We're basically saying we're okay with that.
Oh, yeah, what are
Seven
we
would
saying?
be
Yeah.
okay, so for all 10 of these are being requested, your conditions are what you put in the back, so if they're not related, it's approved. Or recommended.
So that's saying,
However, with 7, we do want the carriage walks along the cul-de-sac,
and the road,
and that is not called out.
right. So we want something in the cul-de-sac.
So you could add a fixed condition,
Definition.
stating that
Yeah.
carriage walks
And we're also.
And
be included.
Roll curve, yeah.
I didn't finish my motion.
Oh,
And then, carriage walks in the cul-de-sac.
All right.
Now I'm done. Although I will have it on the record that I was never a fan of the road connecting, but that's done now, so. moving on.
Okay. That's a motion.
That is a motion.
Okay, is 10 covered, because that's with DPW, garbage trucks, fire trucks, are we comfortable with?
What's 10 covered under?
They're probably gonna say no.
10 is covered under number 2.
10 is covered under.
Oh,
number
it
two.
That they can service it.
The public works.
But they're gonna say that they cannot. I think we know that.
Are they?
They've already said they can.
They'll have to show.
Okay.
So I just wanna make sure we're anticipating that.
Well, that's shut. Now, can they add that to the agenda packet for the council next time? When the council sees it?
If it's there, 16th, you just have 8 days.
But you could send, if you receive it, it's not like you're restricted to just this information. You could add that to the packet. For the council. If it,
Added, they
Like
could
last
pull the
minute.
item and have someone present it on their behalf, it could be added to the council in a variety of ways.
or they can ask the department, since the department will be at the council meetings.
They can ask the question.
Okay.
directly to the department.
Oh, well, that,
Good. Assuming the council pulls it.
I thought they will.
After that, we're gonna have discussion, I sure.
Well, then our member from the council. can ask the council.
I won't be the only one.
Didn't you request that it be added?
What the,
Like the commission can request paperwork to be added for common council. If the commission is looking for some clarification, they can request staff and send it to council.
That's what I thought.
Are you sure about that? I'm positive.
So maybe I didn't finish.
Because if you can have a paperwork.
right, there have to be by Friday.
Generally, what comes out of the plan commission is what they get here, because this is the public hearing. So when you send stuff off to council, you typically, I would want to confirm it with the law department, but typically you can't change things and add it in between the space and that space. Because you're required to get a recommendation by the plan commission, so if you're changing the document, the information, you're no longer getting an accurate recommendation from the plan commission. You're altering it before it goes to council, so I would have to get confirmation from law, if that's truly not my understanding. I mean, they can present at the council, obviously.
Yes, either way, if we get new information before council, it can get in front of the council somehow.
Yes,
Right.
Just maybe not.
maybe not in the packet. Informally, you can do a communication.
It will get there.
I guess I would just like to say for the record, I do appreciate what's been proposed here. I like the intersections. I don't see anything that says that this won't work as proposed. So I will second the motion.
All right, so we've got a motion by Commissioner Craddock, a second by Commissioner Ravinsky. Do we have further discussion?
Hmm.
No.
Could
you re-say your motion? I'm sorry, we're just trying to keep track here over here. It's basically with those conditions, and we're tying those to the 10 points that we've been talking about.
So the motion is to recommend for approval with the 3 conditions as outlined by staff related to approvals for number 1 with variances 5 and 6 and 8, number 2, 5 and 6 and 10, 3, 5 and 6 and 9, and 4 related to all variances.
And then adding carriage,
And
and then the 5th one about the carriage.
Adding the carriage walks.
Carriage walk and roll over.
That would be another.
Yes.
Right.
But since the floor is open for just, I will say that.
It is not open.
We're
No,
not.
no, the floor, we haven't voted yet. The vote hasn't been called.
Okay.
I will say that this, it's been echoed already several times, but just to bring it to conclusion, that it is unfortunate that we didn't have the information. I think we needed to make a stronger recommendation. And I think that any council member that's taking it up next time will watch this and know that, and hopefully will ask the questions they need to that'll make them feel more comfortable. But I think we have taken it as far as we can possibly go. And even if we were to postpone it, I was moving toward, when we first started talking about it, we should lay it on the table and wait until the next time we meet, so more information. But at this point, if there's not specific information that we can be asking for, this could go on forever, so.
We'll say it.
So thank you. So,
And I appreciate your staff for being here, for your department. So.
Yeah.
It's full from all of us.
Yeah. I mean, we had more other staff here for Popeyes for this, and this is not bigger. So that's kind of disappointing.
We know.
Not reflective on you guys.
Now, like on you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right, so we've got a motion by Commissioner Braddock, second by Commissioner Ravinsky. With all the conditions as restated. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, and that goes to City Council for January 16th. Moving on then to item number 9, which we did have a public hearing on earlier. Let's see here. Consideration with possible action on the request to create a planned unit development at 2405 West Mason Street, 0 West Mason Street, and 09 Street to allow the development of 8 attached single-family homes, 7 single-family home lots, an extension of Kinkle from West Mason Street to Hobart Drive, submitted by Garrett Later related to property owned by GB HMC West Mason LLC, Schatz Family LLC, and Green Bay Parks.
So I won't go over all the details, we can kind of zoom through, you got the area, you got the zoning. You can just go down to where the colorful one there. So I just wanted to go over some of this, so what you're gonna see is land use restrictions. In the blue, it's gonna do everything that's allowed in the general commercial district. The townhouses is gonna allow townhouses, or single family detached, excuse me, 2-family detached. Where the single family homes are, that would also only allow single family detached dwellings. There's certain things like live work units, short-term rentals, community living, family daycare that you have to allow in every district, those will be in there as well. The park area, which you can't see well on this one, but would just follow our public institutional district. And that yellow area, which is a future development area, which we don't necessarily know, and we suspect that PUD would have to be amended, when the developer comes forward with that. We would mark as a, same as the single family area, basically across the street. I had mentioned a lot of the dimensional requirements, so in the PUD, you'll see there are a lot less. That's required by code. So again, like single family, we'd allow a 6,000 square foot lot with 35-foot frontage. The townhouses, So that would be for the townhouses. For the regular homes, we would allow them to be 43 feet wide, 5,700 square feet in area. I mentioned some of the setbacks, some of the very narrow or small setbacks that are throughout this PUD. We have put measures in here to mitigate the negatives that could come along with those small setbacks. Yeah, and I think that if you look at the planned development, we allow a little bit bigger heights for the commercial area and also for the townhouses in case they wanted to be two-story townhomes. And we increase the impervious surface coverage a bit. Again, when you're going about 30 acres for the overall development area, go a little more dense in this area, you have a lot of green space to the east that is not being developed. And that is really the biggest changes to the PUD. Staff did not have really any objections to the designs of the lots or the uses on site. It was mainly
The 10 points.
correct.
Okay.
So with
You
that,
want
we
to
are.
revisit those? No, we're good, we're good.
So with that, we are recommending approval with two conditions. Approval of the related subdivision variance request and adoption of the draft plan development.
Motion to approve with staff recommendation.
Second.
I have a question. No, that's fine.
No,
No,
that's
I mean,
not.
it's not right.
Public hearing was number 7 for the.
Oh, okay, great.
We
No,
jumped,
Go ahead.
we skipped.
I wanna hear.
Start line.
No, I just have a quick question, Dave. Oh, I didn't, maybe I missed it. How many total units is it?
There would be 8 townhomes and 7 single family.
Oh, that's it. Okay. So the
And then
townhomes are not
possibly,
like,
we don't know on the other side of
Okay.
Hinkle, probably another 8 to 10 over there, I'm guessing, maybe one.
so the townhomes both have 2 garages?
No, the townhomes are
Each one.
attached, so it's like one has a
It's
garage and the
two.
other has a
That's
garage.
just 2 separate units, right?
Right, but they're
That's what I
set.
thought. Okay.
Yeah, but if you look at the parking section of the PUD, it'll spell out what's permitted as far as parking.
Okay.
Okay.
I could have asked this before, but now I'm curious. That so much of this land is in a floodplain. How are these homes not in the floodplain?
It is very limited to the east side of the wetlands.
I got you if you need it.
Oh.
Say my house. It's my house. My house is the only one in the floodplain.
I do.
I was wiped out by the flood, so. But anyway, I live near the area over there on the other side of the floodplain, so I was just curious how that's not in the.
It avoids it.
Probably has to do with the grading.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably the old days when that creek was surface creek,
Oh, sure.
that created quite a bit.
Probably doesn't get anywhere close to this.
I don't know. But the developer did do a wetland delineation and a floodplain study and a navigable waterway locating. So I mean, in these years, he's done his due diligence.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
How can that, yeah.
So got a motion by Commissioner Vinsky, and a second by Commissioner Pratt. I was pointing at the wrong, oh my goodness, okay. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead with a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and that will move forward to City Council for January 16th. Moving on to informational directors reports. Cheryl.
I think I'm
No?
doing it actually.
Oh.
She is welcome to speak if you like. She might be. Unmute herself.
Oh, hi, Cheryl. She's like, I heard my name.
No, I defer that to Matt.
Okay.
Matt's prepared to speak.
Sure, so I did attach, as requested, the development tracker and the packet. I'll mention that this is still very much a work in progress. It's a pretty new thing we started doing, for redevelopment authority. To kind of track the projects. Of course, this does not encompass everything happening in the city of Green Bay. It'd be a much larger spreadsheet, but it covers the things that RDA is really paying attention to. Because, you know, we are looking at incentives, or it's RDA owned land, or there's some special, unique approval that we just need to focus on. So I've got the whole list there. If anyone has questions about any of the proposals, I'm happy to discuss them.
Oh, look, number 4, Monroe.
Yeah.
It's still alive,
Look at
Yeah, it's still there.
Yep, that one is not moving as quickly as we had all hoped. We do have a development agreement there with the developer, Ted Backham's company, Propco LLC. We are continuing to press him to move something forward. We might be pulling an amendment to the development agreement here in the next couple months. But like so many other projects right now, the cost of construction coupled with interest rates is really the challenge with this site.
Or maybe it was underground parking.
I
That-
just met with Ted today.
yeah.
And he is still working on this project. It isn't dead yet in his eyes yet. We're really hopeful to bring something back to the RDA in February. He's looking at his original plan, so we're hopeful.
Thank you.
Any other projects? You have questions?
I do, but you probably can't answer them until.
Yeah, tomorrow RDA meets, we will be considering planning option extensions on two different sites. One is the Adam Street surface lot that New Land Enterprises is considering for pretty large redevelopment. So yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow, as well as the parking lot behind what is proposed to be the Green Bay Public Market. So both of those developers need just a little bit more time to get their proposals organized, so we'll be considering those extensions tomorrow.
How long are those extensions usually?
The New Land request is an additional 3 months. Then on Broadway for the public market lots, they will be looking at, I think, a 3-month extension with staff authority to extend for an additional 3 months. So not to bring it back to RDA, but just to prove that additional. So total 6 months possibly.
What about JBS?
JBS, yes, the staff did put out RFP for development. So we were looking for developers to submit proposals on how they would build that site out based on the concepts that we had put together with Gray. We didn't get a very strong response. We are currently looking at breaking that RFP out in chunks. So a developer could propose something on a smaller portion of the site, and another developer can propose something on a separate location on the site, just to make that a little bit more easier, bite-sized pieces really for developers. Before we were asking them to propose something on the whole thing, or to develop partnerships to put a plan together. And yeah, sadly, it just didn't move forward as we had hoped, but we feel like we'll have a lot better response with the second go around. So we'll be putting that out any day now if it isn't already.
And Village of Bellevue did approve their portion of the plan development, and I think you guys will be seeing the second one. Second reading, or did I might have already gone? Second reading of the JBS PUD. So then all the regulations will be in place. And we meet weekly with, I'm afraid, the design work on all the individual items is taking place that way. Maybe not as we speak, but tomorrow morning they'll be on it again.
Whatever happened with the development in the parking lot across from the Cherry Street ramp?
That's what
But
that
that-
one's top.
Oh, that's-
Attitude.
Yeah, that's
Oh, is that on there?
Do you mean the other one? Bosses?
Yeah.
Oh, the bosses?
221 Cherry.
Yeah.
Is that on here too?
No.
It should be
222 Cherry. Thank you.
222 Cherry, yes. So yeah, we've had a lot of conversations with that developer over the past several weeks, and so we had hoped to actually get on tomorrow's RDA agenda. We didn't quite get everything we needed, so we'll be taking that in February as our plan. Amend the development agreement to provide a little bit more time in new terms. So that's what we're doing.
The housing in Baylink is still going forward.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. Yeah, you can see it from the window. They're doing plenty of work there.
the units with no windows.
It's got-
Working on condos for that.
Yes.
This is a little bit of a loaded question, but there's a couple big properties that I would anticipate coming
online soon, WPS, the old coal piles. I don't know what's going on with the Ashland Viaduct, that would be a great improvement. too. Just, I don't expect any specific answers, but like, those are some pretty big tracts of land that I'm sure we would love to see something
Oh,
like.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Canada National doesn't want us.
you're-
doing anything about it, though.
I know. I just hope there's, maybe it's part of the master plan. Or comp plan issues, right? So just, I would love to see something there, and every time I look at this, I hope there's something.
Yes, we are having conversations on most of, actually, kind of
All of those things, yeah.
So,
And
yeah,
others.
they're big and in some cases quite thorny, so nothing will happen quickly, but it's always kind of top of mind and we are ramping up to move projects forward.
It's just such a unique opportunity to have that much available developable land in the city. Hopefully sometime in the next decade.
Wonderful.
Right.
Yes. I just hope that some of this at the shipyard is a catalyst to really move those coal piles.
Yes, please.
That's the plan, and really the first piece for the coal pile relocation is the improvements to Pulliam, which is on the spreadsheet. So that is actually, the engineering for that is underway now to improve the Pulliam site to be able to accommodate the coal pile relocation.
Can you not sell the coal?
Hmm?
Can you not sell the coal?
Sell
I mean,
it.
you're just gonna use, you just use it till it's gone and then.
Well, no, they keep, that's all
Right.
the stuff that get moves into the center of the state.
But that is their business, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they
It's still
they
being
still
used.
bring more in. I think the goal was
That's all
that
makes me
they
cool.
use up what they have and they would bring more into a new site. So they would stop
Right.
dropping.
Right.
Once you see it
dumped on the new site, then
Then, the other right.
pile's going away.
Yep, yep,
Yeah,
So water
that's-
that.
that's-
Right.
yeah.
Start using power drive. All right, Leo, free go.
That place is scary.
You're showing your age.
Yeah.
Tower drive.
There is no longer a tower drive.
Yes, there is, and there's still a Sears Tower. I
Scary.
don't wanna hear about it. Okay, all right.
Next meeting.
All right, the date of the next meeting is January 22nd, 2024.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Raddick, second by Vice Chair Miller to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.